Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto becomes Hokage after Hiruzen sarutobi death. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by DisobedienceWriter and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. A week after the demonic disaster named Kyuubi almost leveled Konoha, notices went out to the Anbu. Several senior ninja now had new internal duties. For some reason, the three Hyuga Anbu began spying on the Uchiha. Two Uchiha spied on the Hyuga. The Inyazuka Anbu members were tasked with the Inoshikacho clans. The Nara clan spied on the Inyazuka. Hada Kakashi was pulled from his grief over the death of his sensei to start surveillance on the civilian council members. No one knew why they were tasked away from reconstruction or intensified border patrol. Internal spying was usually a matter for Root, wasn't it, or the counter-espionage group. A few people tried to get the Hokage or even Jiraiya to explain what was going on. Orders were orders, the Hokage sat resolute and said nothing. Indeed, most of the Anbu didn't question their orders. The Hyuga were naturally suspicious of the Uchiha loathed the Hyuga. A few Anbu were now getting paid by the Hokage to do what their clans would normally have them do in their off hours. Reports flowed into the Hokage. The information he wanted to know was so strange. Were the Uchiha talking with people outside of their compound more often? Did the Yamanaka clan ninjas talk with a lot of civilians? It was a full week later that notices went out to the clan heads and the elder counselors. There was a meeting at 9 that night less than 2 hours distant. A newly reinstated Hokage wasn't known for being dramatic, so the counselors and clan heads showed up expecting either great or terrible news. 2 weeks after the Kyuubi disaster, they were expecting more dire news. They were proven correct when an unspeakably angry Sarutobi Hiruzen stormed into the room. Normally a genial sort, an angry Hokage had the council nervous. The news was going to be terrible had Iwa resumed the war. It wasn't every day that the most powerful ninja in the fire country seemed like a raging volcano. Disquieting thoughts bubbled up in the minds of everyone present. Sit, he said it barely a whisper, still everyone fell into their seats. A rather dour-looking Toad-san and Jiraiya followed the Hokage into the room. Then, ominously, the doors were shut and sealed from the outside. This was a rare sort of security precaution. All the evidence pointed to war. How many of you in this room like living in a hidden village? The Hokage asked. The assembled elders and clan heads of the village were surprised at the question. A lot of shrugging and confusion followed. This wasn't the way Sarutobi usually spoke. He was direct and to the point. Raise your hands if you like living in Konoha. The barked command shocked the listeners. Everyone raised a hand. This was embarrassing to them, like being back in the ninja academy. Raise your hand, the angry Hokage said, if you love that we're nestled into a vast forest. A forest our Shaddai Hokage endowed to us his greatest and most incredible work, something that could never be replicated, not with all the earth and water users in fire country. The counselors and clan heads did nothing. That just made the Hokage angrier. If you like living in a forest, raise your hand. Again, all the hands went up. And who here had donated their time to helping those injured in the disaster? To making life a bit better for your neighbor, for the man who sells you daikon, or the woman who bakes your bread? All of you, right. Some hands went up without a thought. The more snobbish clan leaders reluctantly raised theirs, as if they had difficulties remembering ever helping anyone. I can assume everyone here wants their children, their heirs, to grow up among the leaves, right? This was an easy one. All the hands rose up as one. Yes. Many of you have just had children. Some are the new clan heirs. Some will, unfortunately, have to replace clan heirs who died during those horrible events when the hospital was damaged and part of a village wall caved in. That sad history had been discussed among the clans. Why did Sarutobi bring up such a painful subject now? The Yamanakas had lost a son, the designated heir. The Abiram had lost 2 children and their clan head, extinguishing that branch of the family. The Uchiha had lost almost 10% of their ninja, including the third in line to be clan head behind Fugaku's own 2 sons. Yes, it's a fine thing to live in a village like this one. A fine thing. 3 Hokages to date have died to keep this place alive, I checked the rolls, and another 1800 Joun in rank ninja have died in our decades of skirmishes, intrigues, and wars. A beautiful forest we have grown from blood, sweat, and ground bone. A beautiful place to raise children. The clan heads, in particular, had no idea if Sarutobi had lost his mind. The words coming out of his mouth, this anger, what had happened? If it wasn't war, what was it? Sarutobi stopped for a moment, looked at Jiraiya, and took a deep breath. Fine. Everyone in here is loyal to the leaf. So you attest. Now tell me if you'd all like to have stone ninjas attack us in a week, anyone? The elders looked confused. What the Hokage said wasn't a declaration of war, was it? No one wants that, Hokage-sama, said the acting head of the Abiram clan. With the previous head's death, the internal politics of selecting a new permanent head would take time. No one says they want that, Jiraiya said, his tone even angrier than the Hokage's. But that's what you cloud-headed fools almost caused. What? The Uchiha clan head shouted. A number of other people jumped to their feet to defend their patriotism. Sit, the Hokage said, barely constraining his rage. All of you return to your seats. We have much to discuss. Sarutobi was usually so mild-mannered that it was odd to see him stand and begin pacing the way a caged tiger might, and the council knew that this aged man was more deadly than any tiger. Because of the devastation from the Kyuubi's attack, we are at our weakest right now, the third Hokage said, his weariness only exceeded with the vigor of his anger. You all know this. It's vital we keep this truth secret. Right. We must repair ourselves as fast as possible, giving our enemies as small an opportunity as possible to learn of our distress. The assembled elders all agreed. Who knew what Stone or Cloud might do if they had accurate information as to what had happened? Even their ally Hidden Sand might get some fool-headed ideas given the chance. The main wall hadn't been completely repaired yet, and Konoha's surviving ninja forces were mostly injured or despondent in grief at the present moment. Battle-hardened ninja knew what it was like to fight in battle. But to fight the unstoppable, the juggernaut of a Bijuu, that was something else entirely. Some of the ninja on the battlefield might never be right in the head again. Secrecy. We all know the importance. It's common sense. It's been discussed in this very chamber 2 times since the attack. So how is it that one or more traitors sit on this council, traitors who would draw the Stone Army to us? That prompted more outcry, of course. The look on the Hokage's face was enough to put down this eruption of self-preservation. You, all of you in this room save the Aburam and 2 of the minor clans now present, were told 8 days ago of this village's most recent S-class secret. I even formed a special law to protect this information to keep Konoha and also the young sacrifice safe. Danzo, along with Hamura, finally understood what this was about. The head of Root began trying to figure out how he was going to survive this. Sarutobi would assign a slap on the wrist, right? Perhaps a loss of political power or a forced retirement. But a retired ninja can maintain unofficial power for a very long time. Danzo's mind churned through his options. Less than a week later, what do I find? Defiance, passing of the secret through the clans, even civilians discussing military secrets on the street corner. For a normal secret, I would be angry but dismiss it as a bit of venting, dangerous but potentially necessary. But not for this secret. Now you shall know why I am so angry, so furious. A team of Chunin out patrolling 7 days ago discovered something that chilled my blood. The angry face of Sarutobi became fixed. A spy from Stone, rushing back to Earth Country as quickly as he could. Cold horror bloomed in the minds of not a few clan heads present. The greater part of the room now saw where this story was going, and they were too weak to keep Sarutobi and Jiraiya from doing what they had now resolved had to do. This spy was taken down easily by surprise and sent to interrogation. Do you want to know what this spy had learned just from walking our streets? He knew the classified details of what had happened to Kyuubi, even the name of the Jinchuriki. He knew the specifics of the sealing array used. He knew even how long the seal had to be in place. 9 years before we could be absolutely sure that Kyuubi would die when his jailer died. He knew details I released to this council only 1 day before the spy heard them. These details I only released to this council under great duress and under my special law. Why then did a spy learn them so quickly? A spy so green he was taken down by Chunin eating their dinner while out on patrol. The Uchiha head had grown paler and paler. I protest. Sit down, you bloward. You and your ilk have almost brought a war upon us at the time we're least able to cope with one. To think I thought this council was worth the frustration, that the idea of participation and semi-representative democracy was valuable, that it would keep us from becoming monstrous and corrupt, that we were different from Stone and Cloud and Hidden Mist because our clans and our villagers could be involved in governance. I was a fool. I considered some of you as adversaries or as annoyances. But I was wrong. As a body, this council is worthless except to bring down ruin upon us. You can't keep your mouths shut. So many treasonous things have begun in the minds of people who had the privilege of sitting in this room. I should strike these betrayers down as I speak. The Uchiha shut up midway through that vitriol. He was a formidable ninja, but the professor could knock him to pieces in minutes, having developed now forbidden techniques that negated the Sharingan's predictive and copying abilities. You all expected me not to notice you were violating military intelligence protocol, that you were spreading vital classified information so freely that a green spy from Stone, here on a simple training mission, could learn our most critical secrets within hours of entering our village. I am not a doddering fool. I have not forgotten my job in the all too brief time that the Yondaime took the leadership of Konoha. I am the Fire Shadow, I have the will of fire, but today I must also harden my heart and perform a most painful duty. For 1 week I have had my Anbu spying on all of you. I preyed on old hatreds, and no one questioned why I was spying on my own people so soon after a disaster. I have a good deal of evidence, enough to pass judgment. For breaking the special Kyuubi law, this council, per my powers as Hokage in a time of disaster or war, is dissolved. All of you will submit to informal questioning as to what you know of the security leak. Those of you responsible will spend time with the Anbu interrogators. Those who maliciously broke the law will receive the full sentence, death. Those who are merely stupid or gossips will be removed as ninjas. None of the guilty will ever hold positions of prominence in this village again. At this, the head of the Uchiha clan attacked. It was either he assassinate the Hokage now or die a traitor later. The Hokage had expected it. The Hyuga Anbu had provided evidence that suggested nearly every Uchiha knew of the Jinchuriki, and it was clear that news was passing to civilians from several Uchiha. Perhaps they expected for village mobs to deal with the Jinchuriki, not caring that the seal needed time to bind the Kyuubi soul to the young boys. Not caring that it was entirely likely that this act of vengeance would give Kyuubi back all his power. The Uchiha would destroy anything, even a baby, that had the potential to become more powerful than even their greatest prodigies. It was the Uchiha way. Konoha had always gone along, turning a blind eye, in the past. Well, save for when the Shadame and Uchiha Madara got into a battle over their tactics and goals. The Hokage batted away the fire attack as he leveled a massive killer intent at the only Uchiha in the room. This attack was one the professor had used very rarely, but it worked. The amount of fear generated within the hate-filled Uchiha's mind caused a blood vessel to burst. The man fell over, incapacitated and slowly dying. Anyone else care to challenge me? The Hokage looked over the cowering morons with disgust. I may be old, but I can kill the strongest of you just by glaring at you. The quivering mass of the dying Uchiha clan leader on the floor gave testament to that. All of you will be taken for questioning by several people I trust implicitly. The traitors will feel the talents of the Anbu torture squad. You will reveal the name of every person you informed of this secret and why. This is not a gossipy shogi parlor, this is a military village. Secrets, even one you hate, can kill us if known to a wide audience. Jiraiya, usually a goofball, looked as severely angered as the Hokage. He finally spoke up. My greatest student gave his life to save this pissant village, and all of your pettiness nearly took that and threw it away. I counseled against sharing any information with you. I had a more hard-nosed understanding of what many of you were. Sensei decided to trust in your military instincts, your self-preservation instincts. He has already admitted his folly. Stone could have mobilized and been here within a week, and they would have known exactly which child to secure. They'd have killed the poor tyke because they are truly heartless bastards, and Kyuubi's chakra would have been free to reform a demonic body. All of us would have died. We've let you spoiled princesses poke your noses into things for too long. I'm going to start my interrogation with the Hyuga. The Hokage just nodded. As of now, I am sole leader of the village. All of the special dispensations for clans are void as several clans have brought us to war and should feel the pain of what they did, and I will appoint special advisors to deal with trade, reconstruction, relations with the daimyo, and other matters. We're done. The Hokage and Jiraiya left through what had been a sealed door. The other door to the room opened and a variety of Anbu who did not come from clans poured into the room and overwhelmed the mostly elderly council members. Some of these people had once been fighters, but they couldn't easily stand up to men 30 or 40 years younger. Some hadn't even trained regularly in a decade or longer, so used to sitting in the council chambers and meddling in things not within their purview. The civilian councillors, who had not been invited to this meeting, were dragged from their homes by masked Anbu. The kinder Anbu used pressure points to knock them unconscious. A few of the ones who'd experienced council politics before were a bit more aggressive. The Hokage had approved all of this in advance. After all, he did understand the power of a bit of theater for the general populace. Inside and outside the council chamber, the guiltiest struggled the hardest. They had caused the Hokage to invoke the penalty clauses of his law. They had caused the power of the clans to be somewhat broken. It was possible that none of the clans would be trusted for a long time to come after all the revelations came out. None of the Anbu seemed at all concerned when they broke arms or had to stab a person to keep him from escaping. The bloody scene inside the room would keep it from being used as a meeting space for a long time. The Hokage did not have it remodeled for nearly a decade, as he considered it an honest, vicious blot, one that should be remembered on the village hidden in the leaves. The Anbu began the interrogation of Danzo a few minutes after 3 o'clock in the morning. The man had been a rival for years, but Sarutobi had enjoyed the sparring for a good long while. He had never thought his perhaps friend was so deep in corruption. The more of these interrogations Sarutobi listened to, the more out of touch he felt. All this vile, beastly plotting inside his village walls. Minato had asked Sarutobi 2 months ago what he should do about Danzo. The young Hokage had been considering forcing the aged root commander on a suicide mission, just to be rid of him. Sarutobi had counseled against it, a foolish effort. Sarutobi steeled himself and stood behind the one-way mirror. It was nearing 4 o'clock in the morning, but Sarutobi subsisted on anger right now. Now, Danzo, the interrogator said, one of the few interrogation specialists who weren't compromised in some way by Root's blackmail or coercion schemes. Tell me the names of those you informed about the Kyuubi aftermath. You're going to kill me anyway. I have confessed my crimes, fallen on my sword for a once great, now wasting away village. That is enough, I think. The interrogator, one of the few remaining who was trained during the Nidame's reign as Hokage, leaned forward. You know my reputation, Danzo. Do you really want to see my technique with your own eye? Sarutobi stifled a laugh at the little joke. Mocking Danzo for his infirmities was wrong, huh? Sarutobi hadn't stayed up for this many continuous hours in a good many years. The hours were wearing on him. You wouldn't that bastard Sarutobi signed a warrant, didn't he? It's bad enough you're going to kill me, but torture. The kind I practice well, it doesn't leave much in the way of a mark. Do your worst. Sarutobi closed his eyes and rubbed them. Danzo's holding out like this said that he knew something important. He was being stubborn to demonstrate something, to win a concession or maybe to be a bastard until the bitter end. Hokage would find the information. The number of failures the man had could be counted on 2 hands, all due to his subjects' hearts giving out under stress. Less than 10 died from the more than 1,000 who had chatted with this legend. Sarutobi watched as the barrel of water was carted into the room. Is there nothing I can do to prevent this? The interrogator asked his subject. Danzo spat. Not today. Not because of you. You should feel lucky I am your lowly interrogator. Had you been before the Shodai Hokage himself, you would feel living wood piercing under your finger and toenails, growing millimeter by millimeter until you begged for death. My technique is less refined. Well, we shall begin. The old interrogator formed some hand seals and a thin column of water erupted from the tank. The first bit formed up a collar around Danzo's neck. He was immobilized. The next bit splashed against the man's lips and teeth, prying them open and continuing down his throat. The water hung there, holding Danzo and suffocating him. As Danzo's eyes lit up in horror at feeling a technique that should never have been invented, Hokage performed another set of hand seals and the water from his throat, esophagus, lungs, and stomach began to draw back slowly. By the time the water was gone, Danzo was nearly passed out. It was a pain, Sarutobi knew from watching Hokage work, the inevitable blackouts this technique caused. But Hokage was always cautious to begin and quick to stop once a subject had broken. The names, Danzo. Tell me the names. The leaf is rotten, Danzo's damaged vocal cords rumbled. The branches are rotting. When the fire comes, the leaf will burn. Hokage made more hand seals, and the process repeated itself. Sarutobi left the room and let Hokage ply his trade. He had other conversations to observe. The Uchiha elders had been taken as a group a few hours ago. Jiraiya had one of them now. You can't do that to us. You can't. That was a female voice. Fugaku's wife, Makoto. Sarutobi stepped into the viewing area and fully closed the door. You're mistaken, Jiraiya said. The clan laws have been repealed by a wartime decree, the village council has been disbanded, too. Now you will tell me how you were told the true details of the Kyuubi attack. I have rights. I demand to speak with my husband. Sarutobi was surprised that she didn't already know. Jiraiya must be saving that information for a reason. Right now, you are suspected of treason. I don't think the Hokage cares much about your rights. Fugaku would never permit this. Sarutobi recognized that the woman had entered a kind of fugue state. Her brain just wasn't processing the questions Jiraiya asked anymore. Your husband is dead. That got a reaction. It wasn't a scream or tears or even shock. The only thing Sarutobi noticed was her lip beginning to quiver. She was a trained kunoichi, after all, and could mask her emotions. How? He attempted to assassinate the Hokage with a fire jutsu. The Hokage, well, he proved why he was Hokage then. Your husband died a minute or two later. We are broken, then. All the Uchiha elders are in cells like this one. None of you will ever leave, not until we understand the full extent of this treason. All this, the destruction of our clan, for one simple little baby. He should be dead. I care not for a discussion of policy with a traitor like yourself. I care only for information. Now speak. The Hokage wouldn't kill the child, so the Uchiha elders, all of us, we decided to plant the seed of an idea. A bit of overheard gossip here and eventually some civilian makes an attempt and gives everyone else the idea. That child should be dead. Names now. Sarutobi had heard enough of this. All the Uchiha elders, 6 ninja in number now that Fugaku was dead, all conspiring. They would have to be killed. Minato thought he was ending the chaos and destruction, saving the village. But the method of salvation he chose was now ripping the hidden leaf to shreds, exposing the rot that was far more widespread than Sarutobi had feared to imagine. Sarutobi walked out and picked up a clipboard. The preliminary results were in. Of the 21 council members and minor clan advisors, 14 had broken the law. Of the civilian council members who were informed of the Kyuubi details, all of them had broken the law. Sarutobi had long debated with himself whether there more danger sharing military information with civilians who did not and could not understand the importance of discretion or in allowing only ninja to get restricted information. The answer was still unclear. He flipped a few pages on the clipboard. Many of the other counselors knew that the law had been violated and did nothing. They would receive lighter sentences, but they were not innocent. Right now, the Anbu had warrants to apprehend more than 40 civilians. The days of the Uchiha-led Konoha police force were over. Civilians would need to get used to being handled by the Anbu. That reminded Sarutobi to have the police force records audited and examined. Hopefully there would be no irregularities. It was just another blow. How much of the village would revolt? Would it lead to a civil war over something like this, over a baby who kept the raging chakra of a demon held back? Were trained ninjas so blind, leaving aside civilians so given to their passions? Sarutobi set down the clipboard. He knew that Ebisu, the former head of Ninja Force Internal Affairs, an oft-hated figure for his role in policing well the police and the ninja and anyone else who worked for the Hokage. He was an honest sort, but his days as a line ninja were over. He'd be accidentally killed by teammates while on a mission. Sarutobi mulled this over as he settled in to listen to another interrogation. Perhaps Ebisu should go into training the young. It would be nothing at all to make him a special joun and a pity for a talented ninja. It was hard to get someone to take a role in internal affairs, but necessary. Ebisu had done a great service then as he was doing now. Yamanaka Inoichi was likely innocent, but Ebisu would find out for sure. Sarutobi wanted to make damned sure that his lead interrogation specialist was trustworthy. The Anbu would spend weeks on these detailed interviews if Sarutobi could only trust Hokage. He had been retired and living outside the Hidden Leaf during the Kyuubi disaster. Sarutobi had only recalled him a day ago and was positive the man hadn't been caught up with Danzo or anyone else. He settled in to watch Ebisu and Inoichi spar. He had hours to go and his bones were weary. 3 weeks after Kyuubi's defeat, the Sandaime Hokage felt every one of his 65 years of life. He walked out onto the balcony overlooking a wide avenue. It was packed with people. Villagers and shinobi. He didn't have to fake the dire look on his face. Today, people of Konoha, I must relate a tale of treason to you. The gathered individuals standing outside the Hokage tower were understandably nervous. The Hokage hadn't called for a general gathering like this one since Iwa had declared war on the Leaf. Treason had to be at least as bad as a bunch of Earth Country scum. A military secret was revealed to the village council about 2 weeks ago, and they were informed that the information was subject to our highest secrecy ranking. Within the week, the majority of them were freely discussing the secret within their clans. All of the civilian members also violated the military secrecy law. This was supremely dangerous, as a young spy from another hidden village had just infiltrated our village as part of a training mission. He learned the complete details of our military secret within hours, and it was only luck that a group on patrol caught him before he crossed the border. Our council's loose lips with one of our most important military secrets nearly brought us to war, and at a time we could least expect to deal with it. Instead of repairing the walls and tending to the wounded today, we would have been fighting an enemy force looking to crush us at our weakest point. Each person who was told this military secret was questioned, and those who broke the secrecy laws were interrogated to the fullest extent. 23 civilians have been convicted of treason, as have 41 shinobi. Those convicted of the most minor offenses are currently serving time in our special military prison. Those convicted of major offenses will be executed today. That brought a gasp from the crowd. Military executions were almost always done in secret. After secret trials, the village at large never permitted to know of what had happened. Moments later, 31 people, including 7 of the Uchiha clan, were dragged from an unmarked door on the side of the Hokage tower. Their guards brought them in front of the city wills near just to the left of where the Hokage was speaking. As Hokage, I must protect the people of the village from threats foreign and domestic. These traitors have revealed secrets that only through luck did not end in a bloody war. May you wail for all eternity in the guts of the Shinigami. The masked man to the side of the condemned let loose a fire dragon which seemed to gobble up each person. It was a powerful spectacle with an unmistakable message. Military secrets will cost you your lives should you ever betray them. The Hokage continued with his speech. The Uchiha clan compound and several other properties belonging to clans and civilians have been confiscated. These Uchiha lands were originally gifts to lure that clan here, and they have been taken back for cowardly, treasonous conduct. Shortly, we will turn those spaces into affordable housing for those adversely affected by the attack. Likewise, we will be moving our orphanage into new quarters there, seeing that we have a massive increase in the numbers of children without living parents. What will happen to the remaining Uchiha? Predictably, it was a civilian shouting out the question. Why the people loved the cold-hearted Uchiha Sarutobi couldn't understand. Some will choose to resign as shinobi of the Leaf and leave the village and will be bound with a new protective seal to prevent them from ever attacking Konoha. Some have already gone nuken and they will be hunted down and killed after I finish teaching my anti-Sharingan tactics to our hunter ninjas. Those who remain loyal to Konoha will remain welcome to live with us. However, they will no longer have the right to control our police force, nor a right to sit on a council, should it ever be reformed. Traitors, among them all the Uchiha elders, should never prosper from their acts. The Hokage's speech continued and the village's opinion of the man changed. While he had cultivated a laid-back reputation, he now demonstrated why he was the strongest ninja in the village, even at his advanced age. Those few who had escaped detection even after learning about the Kyuubi being sealed into a child knew they had to keep the knowledge secret. The Hokage was willing to follow through on his law. "This is intolerable, Lord Hokage," Hyuga Hiashi said. He had become clan head only 2 years earlier after his father retired and joined the Hyuga elders. "None of my clan has been convicted of anything. None of us were responsible for letting the secret escape. You personally followed the letter of the law, Hiashi. But you broke its spirit. Some in your clan, like the 2 executed elders, openly flouted my decree after they got the information from the Uchiha or others. Remind me, Hiashi, of how much you knew about the whispering of the other clans and what you did to stop it." Hiashi remained stone-faced. "Correct. It is a shinobi's task to maintain secrets, his own, his village's. Your clan failed in that respect. You heard the whispers, your clan associates heard them, and most had enough sense to not pass them along. Why did you not come to me, tell me my few remaining Anbu have been severely taxed with their reduced numbers, severely wounded comrades, and greatly increased duties. The clans needed to step up and didn't. This is conduct I should reward. Encourage. Aside from those disgraced old men who have paid the ultimate price, my clan did nothing wrong." The young Jonin kept trying to argue but a single opinion. It wasn't a strong case to make and Hiashi was still a relatively poor negotiator. "It is not commission I blame you for, but omission. You did not act to stop this. You are as guilty as any of the fools burned to cinders for almost bringing us to war. This argument will not wash." Hiashi, as collected as ever, nodded. "Then I must inform you, Lord Hokage, that the Hyuga will be asserting the right of severing from the hidden leaf. You will follow the traitorous Uchiha, the confused Akimichi, the decimated Kintoru. It is solely within your discretion. I will not even attempt to oppose or delay you. But answer me a question. What do you hope to gain?" Hiashi had not moved during this exchange, but now he looked a bit irresolute. "We must maintain a position within a village where we are respected. That is no longer the case here, Lord Hokage. We will seek a powerful new alliance." Sarutobi just nodded his head, not terribly surprised at the continuing Hyuga arrogance. Their remaining elder council was filled with fools who had not held a kunai in decades, and they dictated policy to the clan head. Hiashi seemed to at least recognize the futility of what he was forced to do today. After all, where would they go? Hidden Mist, the place where the bloodline wars were in full swing. Hidden Cloud, which had several times before attempted to capture, not kill, Byakugan users out on missions. Hidden Stone, which had only been deterred from a continuing war after Minato savaged their last largest armed attempt at invasion. Hidden Sand. Hidden Grass. Hanzu's Hidden Rain. Maybe petition a daimyo to form a new hidden village. No, none of these would kowtow to the Hyuga. Hiashi likely already knew this, but his honor as defined by the Hyuga elders would demand prominence and privilege. "I wish you the best of luck then, Hiashi. Be careful. The Hyuga need no luck." Sarutobi frowned after Hiashi left his office. This would not end well. But he would not return to coddling of the clans, letting them trample through the village as if no one else mattered. The great unraveling was in full swing. That would be his terrible legacy. But at least the Hidden Leaf might have the opportunity to grow stronger from his difficulty. Goodbye Hyuga Hiashi. May the kami guide you safely and may you hide from the hungry eyes of the Shinigami. Sarutobi Hiruzen, the famed ninja professor, could barely keep a civil tongue in his head. The remaining teachers in the academy comprising those not killed by the Kyuubi and not withdrawn from Hidden Leaf by departing clans and minor families had the gall to present these records. It was a disgrace. The Anbu would have another task to sort out very soon. Retired school teachers would soon be visiting Inoichi. Sarutobi thought he himself might be due for a torture session as well for not spotting this mess sooner. Let me see if I understand this. The academy had an unofficial policy of handling disciplinary matters differently depending upon who the student sponsor was. An abashed Chunin named Seiko Noda nodded, unable to form up words. He had never expected to be interrogated by the Hokage of all people concerning the academy and its running. So, if I were to sponsor a student who was disruptive, causing havoc with the other students' learning, how would it be handled? Delicately. And if a similar student spent his time painting classrooms green or planting traps for the teachers but came from a civilian family? Expulsion. The Jounin I entrusted to oversee the academy was a fool then. Best for him that he's now dead. We will rebuild the walls of the building soon enough, but we will not re-implement all the old policies. Do you all understand me? He got back a chorus of discouraged "Hi, Hokage-sama." The Hokage turned to question an Anbu who had been tasked with examining odd caches of paperwork found in the homes of the Trader Council members. "And these papers you wish to discuss? What relevance do they have with schooling?" I believe, the masked Anbu cautiously began, that council members would from time to time pay a visit to certain Chunin at the academy. To what end? To make suggestions, especially on team formation. That is my job. The Anbu nodded, pausing to think his way through a minefield. Correct. But the Lord Hokage listens to advice, if I'm not mistaken. Especially the teacher-generated commentary on each student's progress and assessment of strengths and weaknesses. The Hokage nodded. He turned to look back at Seiko Noda. Is it true? Was pressure applied? The Chunin nodded. Were the comments always accurate? Complete and accurate. The Chunin shook his head and let out a long-held breath. Were favors or money exchanged for these considerations? The terrified Chunin nodded again. The Hokage looked at the other teachers. That none of them would meet his eyes was proof enough. Anbu, what was the end result of these contacts, aside from team placement? I haven't finished reviewing the documents, but the pile I have reviewed suggests a troubling pattern. Yes. If Lord Hokage would care to review team composition for the last decade, I am sure he would find that clan team members often find themselves on teams with other clan members. Yes, I agree with that. And that the teams formed by civilian or orphan children rarely pass their Jounin sensei's personal examinations. You've got to be kidding me. It was so obvious now that someone else had unraveled this mess. The Hokage felt like a fool, but he spent so little time on the academy. Not with wars looming in Jounin to oversee and manage an A and S ranked missions. He had felt comfortable delegating most of the academy issues to people he thought trustworthy, which now seemed misplaced. So the clans look better if their children always perform better than other student ninja, get on better teams, pass out of the academy earlier. This is ridiculous. Half the Hokages have come from no clan, and the other two came from the same one and were ridiculously talented in their own right, not from long-maintained bloodlines. Namikaze Minato, our greatest Hokage, was completely untaught until he reached the academy, and then he grew like a weed. I confess to having excellent tutors early in life. But this kind of sabotage. Making the clans look powerful by literally making everyone else fail and look weak. Am I hearing this right? The masked Anbu just nodded. This sounds like treason to me. Subversion of the village's military strength for favors and money. Have them all taken to interrogation. Let's get the whole picture. The masked Anbu nodded and a few Chunin, fearing this conclusion, tried to escape. One found out it was not possible to shunshin from this room. Sarutobi knew more about sealing than anyone else in Konoha save for his student Jiraiya, and the others found out that an Anbu could subdue several weak Chunin at the same time. Sarutobi watched with his anger finally ebbing away. Had he been sleeping all these long years? Not paying attention. Not questioning what he was told. All of these findings made his village seem like something else, something foreign and revolting. Had his conception of the hidden leaf always been a lie? Or had he let corruption eat away at it? Sarutobi pondered. Haddock, strong clan and exceptional warriors. But that new Jounin Mito guy was easily Kakashi's equal and was an orphan. For every powerful clan Jounin Sarutobi could think of, there were 2 or 3 non-clan ones who were as good or better. Almost all the remaining Anbu were non-clan. Uzumaki Kushina had come from a clan in Whirlpool Country. She had been the last clan Anbu captain. Sarutobi would need to dig deeper. Had the early compromises necessary to fuse Senju and Uchiha which made Konoha attractive to other clans, rotted the village this way? Could it have been possible for things to have gone differently, for Sarutobi to have managed things differently? These last weeks had severely disarranged nearly everything he thought he knew. He hoped there were few more surprises in store for him or the village. In a fit of anger his hand snaked out and plucked up one of the many folders discussed in this room in the past few days. The Hyuga. He flipped it open and began reviewing the report. Graduated 1 or 2 genin every year from the academy. Had 17 active Chunin at the time of their leaving and 62 retired Chunin. Only 7 Jounin, 4 of whom were retired. More of this clan first garbage, Sarutobi realized. These retirements at Chunin level it permitted the ninja to be trained at the village's expense and then to be used for the clan's benefit. Many of these retired Chunin had trained hard and long enough to take and pass a Jounin examination, but instead they remained behind the clan walls. The other shinobi had to pick up the slack. The non-clan shinobi. There cannot be villages within villages if the goal is to have a wholly united village. I cannot and will not permit this to happen, he vowed. I said no, Jiraiya reiterated. Why not? I have my reasons. That's not good enough. You know, I never was good enough for you, sensei. Wonder why I'm the only one of your students who still talks to you. Sarutobi sighed. And, again, the past intrudes upon the present. Why, in my dotage, does everyone see fit to remind me of my more youthful failings? It would have been better to correct me back then. Correct the professor? Surely you jest. He knew everything. Just ask him, he'd tell you. Very funny. I'm not smiling. Jiraiya was being difficult. This was a conversation the Sandaime Hokage had long been bracing himself to have, and now Jiraiya had been in the village to help with the final reconstruction of the village walls. Sure, the masonry had been up for some time. But it had taken 3 weeks to reinscribe all the ceiling arrays and then activate them. Jiraiya hadn't been happy to be stuck in village for 3 weeks, but he'd done it. The man claimed he was born for a life of wandering, women, and worship. The Hokage agreed with the first two, but wasn't sure what Jiraiya meant by the last. His student was a most profane, if amusing, person. If you are not willing to become Goddamn Hokage, Jiraiya, I must ask you to state your reasons. If it is simple resentment towards me, I am afraid that won't cut it. No. No, it's more than that. The Hokage nodded, waiting. I do not trust myself. I trust you. No, stop doing that. Just listen to me, would you? The Hokage just nodded. This was obviously important to his student. I do not trust myself. I thought myself at the pinnacle of my craft a few years ago. I had just trained a ninja to exceed my own remarkable feats. I had a name. I had money. I had a woman in every village and 2 in every city. I felt happy. But it wasn't to be. It was all a lie. My teammate, I distrusted him, but I did not see him for what he was doing. My student, I taught him to be great, but I taught him too well. His knowledge of sealing came to exceed my own. So when I tried to take his place, to offer my life to the Shinigami to save Konoha, I found I could not. I did not have the skill to create and understand and control the arrays. People seemed to think it was a simple matter to call down the death god and get him to do what you want, but after he was called, his actions were all guided and controlled by the seal. Every bit of it. A man-made seal instructing and leading a god, it is as momentous an accomplishment as I make it sound. Minato created the arrays out of whole cloth in less than 4 days. Arrays to guide the death god, arrays to restrain the Kyuubi once inside of the boy, arrays to leech off the Kyuubi's power to make a true powerhouse of a child, arrays to tie the Kyuubi's life force to that of the host. It has taken me 8 months since then, every day since his death, just to begin to unravel it. He was a genius. I gave him knowledge and power as a ninja, he exceeded me by age 20, he eclipsed me by age 24, the self-sacrificing bastard. I was ready to knock him unconscious and do this myself, but I felt like a toddler attending a physics convention when I tried. I now know that what he did just isn't theoretically possible. No other Jinchuriki was created this way. All of them required a quirk of the Shodai's genetics to even capture them. It wasn't possible, as I said, and Minato did it anyway. It would be like me calling down Kami, giving her a corporeal body, having my way with her to her ever-increasing pleasure, and then letting her take my soul in payment. It is the stuff of dreamers and poets and mystics. I trained and lost the most valuable person this village has ever known. I permitted the most horrible person this village has created to betray us for years and then leave without a scratch because of your order to let him go. I suspected my teammate a lot longer than you did. For a decade or more, I watched him and told you to watch him. I feel that I am both not strong enough to have my warnings believed and not strong enough to step in and take the fatal swing of a katana should my village ever demand it. I cannot be Hokage. Not now. Not ever. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked for a place to begin unraveling this mess inside his student's mind. But, he realized that Jiraiya wouldn't listen. He had convinced himself to feel unending guilt and nothing would shake that loose. I will honor your statement, my student. But I will ask again in 1 year's time. You may, but I don't see how my answer will be any different. I have failed you then, my student. I should have struck Orochimaru down myself. That is my failing, not yours. I trained him, I knew he was powerful and a bit twisted, I allowed him to grow unrestrained, like a cancer. It fell to me to end him, but my heart was too soft. This is my shortcoming, not yours. Jiraiya nodded, but said nothing. Sarutobi was stuck. He had the same feelings of guilt for not seeing the rod in his village for so long, but he couldn't just call himself unfit to be Hokage and leave. He had held the office on and off for all of his adult life. There was, by definition, no one more fit to be Hokage than Sarutobi. He wanted to smoke, but just sat there, trying to think his way through this problem. The trouble was there was no easy or simple solution. 3 years later, the fire was everywhere. His family was expelling fireball after fireball, not caring that they hit the tents or the fragile wooden buildings. The boy looked for his younger brother and bit back a sob when he saw the boy crushed under a fallen log. He wasn't moving at all, and the fires were almost on top of him. Sasuke had only been 3. He did not deserve this. None of the Uchiha did. Little Itachi scrambled away from the fighting. He had activated his Sharingan almost 2 years ago, on his 7th birthday. He was now nearly 9 and skilled, but he had never seen a fight before. He was utterly terrified and slunk into the shadows. Soon the ninjas stopped and someone began to douse the flames. The pale man rode on a snake into the area where his adoptive parents' dead bodies lay. Itachi knew they were actually his aunt and uncle, but they had encouraged him to call them mother and father. The pale man jumped down from his snake and pulled out a surgical knife. The moment he saw his mother's severed eyeball in that man's hand, Itachi clamped down a groan. His brain felt like it was filled with stabbing kunai. And his eyes, he'd never felt so much pain. It would be days later when Itachi, all alone, realized that his Sharingan had changed. It was what the old scrolls had called Mangekyo. He had salvaged very little from the fires, but he had managed to bury his disfigured mother and father and what the fires spared of his little brother. He vowed vengeance that day. He vowed he would be stronger than that pale man. He vowed he would step on that man's neck and carve his eyeballs out of his living head. He was Uchiha. Nothing would stop him. 2 years later, 5 years after the great unraveling, it felt like she was flying. Yes, definitely flying. She opened her eyes, realized she wasn't dreaming, and began to struggle against whatever was keeping her arms and legs bound. The flying stopped. The darkness around her head disappeared. "You're awake." Hyuga Hinata blinked. "Yes. Where is my mother? She couldn't take of you anymore. I have adopted you." That didn't make sense to her. Her father was really strong. "Where's my father?" "He was hurt with your mother. If they get better then you can go live with them again." "Okay. Well, I'm going to put this hood back on you so you can sleep. It'll be getting light out soon." Hinata didn't like the dark, but she didn't argue. "Thank you." She was back in the dark and flying again, and the story she had been told made no sense. Where were her mother and father? They were ninja. They were powerful. Sarutobi tried to clear his mind from all the awful news he'd gotten. Jiraiya had reported in that the entire Hyuga had been slaughtered in Wave Country, where they'd been petitioning to form a hidden village. The Wave Daimyo had apparently decided that his country's future lay not in ninja, but in shipping. He'd made a deal instead with the Gato Corporation. Sarutobi knew that man had a less than shining reputation. But the Hyuga were slaughtered to a child. The eyes removed, the bodies charred beyond recognition. Just like the Uchiha 2 years earlier in their makeshift private village in Lightning Country. All dead, all the known Sharingan possessors with their eyes cut out. Jiraiya was sure that that was Orochimaru's work. The Hyuga not even Jiraiya could guess at. There was too little evidence left behind. Orochimaru had left shed snakeskin, like he didn't even care who knew. He turned and began to walk through a park. Nature was good for restoring mental balance. This was a civilian park rather than a military training ground, so it was filled with children. He hadn't expected it, but he saw a bright shock of yellow hair near the swings. Uzumaki Naruto. Just another orphan tucked in among so many others. Leading a happy life, as far as Sarutobi could tell. And he was watching. Every active duty Chunin now did a regular shift at the orphanage every few weeks. The children had competent watchers in addition to the full-time civilians and got to be exposed to ninja every day. It was an unorthodox recruitment method, as many little boys and a few girls declared they would become ninja, but it wasn't primarily done for that reason. The Hokage wanted Naruto and the other children kept safe. The village was smaller now. After the great unraveling, nearly 15,000 civilians had left, almost a quarter of the village population. In the elapsed time, around 5,000 new civilians had moved in. It was a different place. For the clans who'd remained in the Leaf, life was more integrated. The Aburam had mostly stayed as had the Yamanaka. All of them had integrated more into the overall hidden village. The few remaining Akimichi, those who had broken with the rest of their clan, didn't even bother living next to each other. Instead, they had a favorite restaurant in town that served as a communal meeting hall. The Nara, predictably, found it too troublesome to leave, but had largely taken over the top positions in the Anbu division that dealt with civilian matters. Their clan techniques were quite effective in detaining any errant civilians, and without the cost of much effort. The Inyazuka loyalty had kept them in Hidden Leaf, too. They filled many of the top spots among the hunter nin. Indeed, they had prospered by joining in with the community. 3 Inyazuka had made small fortunes opening up public veterinary practices. The people of Konoha and Fire Country, not least the Fire Lord's wife, loved their animals. However, for every clan ninja working in Konoha, there were 5 or 6 non-clan ninja now. The head of Anbu, the top 3 in charge of the hospital, the Jounin in charge of the academy, all non-clan. Since they'd reformed some of the older practices of the academy, namely graduating 30 or so gen in a year only to immediately fail 21 of them out of the shinobi lifestyle, claiming they were too old to rejoin the academy, they had a lot more ninjas to go around. The Hidden Leaf finally had the strength, in pure numbers if not talent, it had before the Kyuubi's attack. Sarutobi, over loud protest and several forced retirements, had declared that no Jounin sensei would be permitted to test and fail out a team. Instead, they would all witness a common skills test held for all potential genin. The terrible practice of favoring clan members hadn't quite faded yet, but team compositions had shifted. There were no more 3 clan member teams and 3 nobody teams. That much the Hokage could ensure. The Hokage felt embarrassed at all those years of wasted shinobi. Potential genin who'd been forced into a civilian life or to enroll in the samurai training program in Fire City. That was a lot of wastage and did so many potentially excellent shinobi tossed out after all those years of training. Sarutobi sat on a park bench and enjoyed the sun's warmth on his face. His head was covered with his special hat, but his eyes were fixed on the boy. He really looked like the yondaime had when he was a boy. Over the years that boy grew and grew, like an out-of-control weed. Naruto was still a bit on the short side, but he made friends easily, it seemed, and enjoyed running, climbing trees, and causing chaos. This anonymity had served Naruto well. The villagers as a whole did not pay attention to the orphanage, and none of the spies who penetrated Konoha. Sarutobi didn't kid himself to think that infiltration didn't happen once a month or more often, even if they had tightened up security, would ever think to look in the new orphanage for the village's most precious military secret, the boy who saved them all every day from the Kyuubi. Naruto would start taking classes at the orphanage school in a few days and would start at the ninja academy in 2 years. The orphanage school was much improved in the last 5 years. The visiting Chunin often helped manage field trips outside the village walls to look at trees and plants or try to walk local wildlife. Naruto would have a chance to learn reading and writing, math and bits of history and pride in the Fire Country. He'd be ready to attend the academy on time. The only thing that Sarutobi still wondered about was when Naruto should be told about his tenant. A part said just as soon as he started learning about chakra. If the yondaime's seal worked as intended and Jiraiya swore it would, the boy would have access to a massive store of chakra. Possibly, if he were trained correctly, an unlimited supply. Another part cautioned him to hold off on telling the boy for a while. Until he made genin at least. Sarutobi had already decided he would visit the boy personally, not just walk by or look at him in the park when he began the academy. He had had a good life so far it seemed. Sarutobi could give him a few more years of comfort. Given that Sarutobi had begun taking a more active role in the academy the last few years, no one would think it odd for Sarutobi to visit with a few young students from time to time. The boy wasn't yet a hero to the village, as the only people who knew of the boy's sacrifice weren't telling, but he would be someday. Jiraiya had already stated he would be willing to train the boy in the future. Sarutobi was sure he would take to teaching the boy as well. Kami knew that the boy could become stronger than even the best Jounin sensei could handle. Yes, that was settled. Sarutobi would take on a new student, one last student. And teach him all that he could, leadership along with the skills of a ninja. Strong in body, mind, and soul. The new generation had the will of fire, Sarutobi would ensure it. One could only hope they wouldn't have to have a heart of stone. But if it came to it, Uzumaki Naruto would be trained in that as well. After all, Orochimaru was still out there with a few dozen sets of Uchiha eyes, and someone had killed and mutilated more than 100 Hyuga bodies. The world would be heating up in a few years, wouldn't it? Uzumaki Naruto would need everything Jiraiya, Sarutobi, and anyone else could teach him. Everything. Time skip. 12 years after the Great Unraveling, the third Hokage smiled when he walked through the academy door. It had been more than a decade since he'd retaken his former position as Hokage, and today his predecessor's son was graduating. The bittersweet day, the best kind. Great sadness, intermingled with great hope. The dead could live on through their children, the legends that the young and alive would accumulate. Even this academy, nurturer of the young and alive, had risen from the proverbial grave. It was a different place from what Namikaze Minato would have remembered. It had more students, for one, and fewer students being dropped between the potential Genin and Genin stages. Jounin sensei tests were abolished. Instead, all prospective graduates were tested in front of all prospective Jounin sensei. No more sweeping shit under the rug. Students passed on their own merits or failed for lack of merit. No Jounin sensei could throw away a team for something nebulous, like lacking teamwork after being together as a team for less than 24 hours. He also couldn't pass a team with 2 deadweights and 1 good genin in order not to fail that third member. Good riddance to bad practices. Also, as much as it had saddened Sarutobi, the academy now taught offensive and defensive techniques beyond hand-to-hand combat and distance projectiles. It had taken more than a few people pointing out how stupid it was for genin to be sent on missions without officially being required to know how to attack enemies or protect themselves. It made Sarutobi a bit sad to churn out so many child soldiers every year, but it was the way of the ninja. He wished they could have more time as children. He walked into the gymnasium and took a seat in the first row. All the prospective Jounin sensei were here, even Kakashi. He'd required more than a few sessions with a Biki to break him of his chronic tardiness. The Chunin instructors brought the 73 examinees into the room. Some of them had attempted to pass before, all of them looked nervous. 4 pairs would spar at a time in front of the panel. Every Jounin would take note strengths and weaknesses about every candidate. The losers of the first round would get to fight other losers, so every person would get to fight at least twice. Winners would fight winners. Everyone, even those in the losers bracket who demonstrated acceptable skill, would pass this test. Those who failed would have to try again next year. Sandaime smiled when Naruto took his turn against the young Inuzuka boy. Naruto remembered he was to use the standard academy style, not the one he and the Hokage had been developing for him to use. That style must only be used against true enemies, training dummies, or various types of bunshin. It was a straight jutsu match. Naruto had speed, but the Inyazuka had a bit more strength and ferocity. There were no chakra attacks, no partner animals, so both were disadvantaged in some way. But, as Hokage, he had declared that every ninja had to be able to defend him or herself, even when without a tool or partner, or when ninjutsu or genjutsu weren't possible to use. If there were fundamental weaknesses in any candidate, they needed to be exposed early on and corrected before those weaknesses got someone killed. Uzumaki Naruto, the anonymous little orphan, had been told of his unique heritage only 2 years earlier when the Hokage invited the young man to start weekly lessons with him. The boy was a powerhouse, rather reminiscent of a young Jiraiya, but with more laughter and less leering at the kunoichi in his class. Naruto finally flipped the Inyazuka into the air. The clan heir landed and had the breath knocked from him. That constituted a win in this spar for Naruto. To everyone present, it looked like both boys had taken the academy lessons to heart. But the Hokage knew that he and his monkey summons had worked extensively with Naruto to build his physique and technique. After all, no 11-year-old likes to get beaten into the ground by a 2-foot-tall summon monkey. Rather than continue to lose, he had learned and got better. And then Sandaime introduced Naruto to a stronger 4-foot-tall monkey. His eyes turned to examine the other potential genin. The spars were good for the most part. Good speed, a bit of power, in all, a lot of potential waiting to be honed. The Sandaime was impressed with the entire cohort so far. Ordinarily when there were physical powerhouses like Naruto, the Inyazuka boy or Hyuga Mishai, who would have been condemned to the branch house, had it survived, it could discourage others. It seemed this group took it as a challenge. In all, only 5 failed the Taijutsu portion of the test, and all of them were first-time test takers. The Sandaime knew they'd do better next year, much better. The second rounds went well, but were shorter for the most part. The first round had seen the students going all out to win. Some of them had little left in reserve. Naruto did well again, and he wasn't even breathing hard. A few Jounin sensei were going to have implement extensive physical conditioning to get some of these students into proper field condition. Oh well, it was a part of serving as a Jounin. The Chunin overseeing this portion of the test began to speak, congratulating all the students and then dismissing those few who had failed. He began to explain the next test, word sarutobi had undoubtedly heard a dozen times already. To Sarutobi's ears, it sounded of background droning. His mind, instead, returned to this school. All those horrible revelations about the academy had prompted change. As before, all prospective genin needed to demonstrate to the Chunin instructors their mastery over illusion clones, the replacement technique, and the disguise technique, but they did this to get their entry into this examination. Now, they also needed to show a few more combat-oriented techniques, which would be the next portion of the exam. The part that generated the most complaints from the students were the community service projects formerly called D-ranked missions that academy students were now responsible for completing. Walking dogs, buying groceries, delivering large quantities of letters for a civilian message service, and picking up trash weren't their idea of proper ninja work, but it was good team building and excellent community relations. For the civilians who lived in the Leaf, it was a chance to interact with ninja, to humanize them in their minds. Sarutobi ruled the Leaf as an absolute dictator, but he was not a cruel man. He wished for the civilians here to understand and honor their ninja protectors. On the matter of these complaints, Sarutobi did not believe that a requirement of 50 community service projects each year per student was unreasonable. It was only a mission every few days, and they were all completed in teams of academy students to build teamwork skills, and let's not kid ourselves, those funds derived from the paid missions helped to keep the academy in top condition. Poor Naruto, though, held the dubious records for the most times catching Tora the cat, along with the fastest time doing so. At least he wouldn't have to do so again once he became a genin, unless he wanted to pick up some spare change. The very idea made Sarutobi smile. Naruto and that silly cat. The second part of the exam began the technique portion. Each prospective genin needed to show offensive and defensive techniques beyond the standard 3. The few clan members in the group could show off clan techniques, some students proved how genjutsu could be used for defense, none of them had any mind technique strong enough to be considered offensive. A small number used swords or other weapons as part of their demonstrations. Most used standard elemental techniques from the academy scroll library. When it was Naruto's turn, the Sandaime watched closely. Naruto had developed quite a lethal arsenal, small so far, but very powerful. In Taijutsu, he was a speed player, but in his ninjutsu, he was a power hitter. Remembrance. 1 year earlier, the Sandaime Hokage looked at his young pupil and wondered how he was going to fix this. He had spent a year wondering the same thing. How to give the boy control over his chakra. When the Sandaime first began giving Naruto a 1-hour lesson each week, he quickly realized that Naruto had tons of chakra, more than Sarutobi even at his peak of youthful vigor, but almost non-existent control. The standard control exercises sticking leaves or bits of paper to one's body with chakra, climbing trees, and even water walking did not do much for his control. He could climb a tree or wall, but he expressed massive amounts of chakra to do it. 1 year of failed attempts at chakra control. Sure, the boy was learning taijutsu and other ninja skills, but Sarutobi could see that the boy would be an ninjutsu specialist. But only if they could get his control in line. As it was, Naruto couldn't produce a single illusion clone and had difficulty tamping down his chakra to perform the replacement technique. "Stop, go ahead and stop, Naruto," the Hokage called out. The young man stopped sparring against his monkey partner. He had obviously developed enough to handle a 4-foot monkey. He would introduce Naruto to a new sparring partner next week. "Are we done then?" The Hokage was about to say yes when an inspiration struck. A conversation a few weeks earlier replayed itself in the Hokage's mind. He'd said no then, but he decided he should try now. "No, I have one more item. It won't take long at all, I suspect." He walked quickly into his home and found the item he was looking for. He picked it up with a pair of tweezers and hauled it back to Naruto. "You want me to take notes or something, old man?" Naruto was confused at the small piece of paper. "No. This is a different sort of test, a chakra affinity test. I am surprised I didn't remember about this earlier. We've exhausted the conventional control exercises, but we haven't even started on the elemental ones. If you already show a strong affinity to one of the elements, then we have a clear path to try to get you some control." "I get it. So I just touch the paper. Touch it and channel some chakra through your fingers, Naruto." The young man touched the paper and it immediately split into 2 pieces. "Wind. How ironic. Maybe my son was right. I spoke over your situation with him a few weeks ago and he mentioned his own troubles mastering his chakra. Asuma said that his chakra control problems once he began, as a Chunin, to work with elemental chakra. I said you were too young to try, but perhaps I was wrong." "Alright. So what did that mean, old man?" "You're a wind user, Naruto. A wild chakra affinity, hard to master, but even harder to defeat a wind master." "Alright." Sarutobi decided to modify the water walking exercise that day. "We're out of time for the day, but here is your next assignment. You will stand above water. Start out with the water walking exercise and then raise a foot an inch. Begin to manipulate the air under your raised foot. Bring your other foot up." "What?" "Yes, get one foot standing on hardened air. Then get the other foot to do it as well." "Sounds impossible. Who are you and what did you do with Naruto? He never says crap like that." The young man sighed and then nodded. "I will figure it out. But why do I have to start out over water?" "Because when you fall, and you will fall a lot, you'll get wet. Consider it motivation." "Old man, I'll do it, but I'm going to get you back for this. I promise. I've heard it before. Be on time next week, too." It was Konohamaru who stopped me in the house. He demanded that I teach him how to throw a kunai. The Sandaime just nodded and sent the boy on his way. It took several weeks of the boy being completely soaked through before he was consistent standing above the water. It took a few more weeks to get him walking on the air rather than the ground. The boy walked in for his next lesson, walking an inch off the ground as was now his standard practice. Indeed, Naruto rarely set foot on the earth. It looked like normal walking, but it wasn't. Naruto now left no footprints. As he practiced his chakra control every time he set foot out of his apartment, which comprised most of every day, as he was a terribly active young man, Naruto got 100 hours a week of control exercises. "Did you practice with the cage bunshin technique I taught you last week?" the Hokage asked. It was a reward for getting his chakra control problems in line. "Yeah. It's pretty great, old man. I've got the henge working with the shadow clones, too. I left my shadow clones out yesterday in some of the training grounds disguised as rocks and stuff. You wouldn't believe what I heard out there. I'll be a great spy master someday." "Perhaps you will, perhaps. But onto new things." "Hold up there, I have something else to show you. I was practicing the other day and I made a great kind of mistake." "What were you practicing?" "Oh. Well, I was working on the wind sword." The Hokage was silent for a moment. "You have to stop sneaking into the shinobi archive, Naruto. You're not even a genin yet." "I know. But the academy library doesn't have any cool jutsu, does it?" "Fine. What disaster did you cause?" the Hokage asked, with a small smile on his face. "Huh? Disaster? No, it's awesome. Let me show you." Naruto formed up a wind blade and then seemed to lose control of it. The blade held even as it shot through the air. A thin gash cut all the way through one of Sarutobi's fence posts. "Nice, huh? We have training dummies for that, Naruto. You don't need to destroy parts of my home, but yes, that was nice. I'll hold back my ideas for next time. Let us explore what you can do with these wind blades that you shouldn't know about." By the end of the hour, Naruto could form up directly manipulated air and send it shooting across the distance between him and a stone training post. The thin line cutting through a wooden post became a deep gouge and a number of radiating cracks on a heavy piece of stone. Considering the size of the stone, it was quite an accomplishment for a mistake. It was another 3 weeks before Naruto formed up multiple blades, all at different heights from the ground, and created the first version of his Finger of God. That name had given the Hokage fits. It's the kind of thing the god of shinobi would do when he wanted to flick a bug away, Naruto said while resting up from an attempt at demolishing a stone pillar. It's the Finger of God technique. Stop coming up with stupid names, Naruto. I like it. You helped me turn this into something, old man, so you get part of the credit. Whether you want it or not. Sarutobi had tried to get his student to be serious, but the name stuck. The boy began naming all his techniques after the god of shinobi. Return to the present. There, in front of the audience of Chunin, Jounin and Hokage, Naruto made 10 shadow clones, a true show of force. The Jounin who knew the technique, not all of them had reserves allowing them to safely use shadow clones, were deeply impressed. A young ninja standing in the auditorium turned toward one of the training logs set up for demonstrations. He made some odd, unfamiliar hand seals, and 4 almost invisible chakra blades formed in front of Naruto and then propelled themselves into the log. It was an improvement over the original technique, but Naruto still called it the Finger of God. The bottom of the training stump reaming. A few bits of the top were in large chunks. But the vast majority of the log was little better than sawdust now. Such a strange, unknown technique got a few Jounin talking. Sarutobi waved them silent. The test continued. Naruto had obviously passed. As did almost everyone else. Only 7 more failed here. A very good result. Some years more than half the prospective genin failed this part. Many selected techniques too difficult for their developing skills and refused to select more appropriate skills when advised by their Chunin instructors. It was a ninja's right to fail, after all, in any rank examination. The Chunin couldn't force them to make better selections, and students who refused to take advice didn't deserve to be genins. The boring Chunin stood up again and explained the final portion. Sarutobi was willing to leave the room at this point, but a ritual was a ritual. This was a test of applied stealth. Each prospective genin was told the location of their hit and given 5 minutes to arrive there undetected by the Chunin patrolling the halls. If they arrived and the Chunin were going fairly easy on their pupils, they passed. It wasn't a well-designed test, Sarutobi knew, rather it was a simplistic rite of passage. Still, the symbolism was important. Knowing how to survive in a dangerous world was a prerequisite for work outside the village walls. Only 2 pupils failed. It was a very good crop. As Naruto left the gymnasium, he tipped his head to Sarutobi-sensei. He also bounced a bit more than usual as he inflated and deflated the small controlled air pockets he kept between his feet and the ground. The Hokage just smiled at the small acknowledgement. Once the new genin left, the Sandaime gestured to the side of the gymnasium and the Chunin instructors led the way. The next phase was about to begin. The next-door classroom had been set up to serve as a conference area. The prospective Jounin sensei squabbled a bit over chairs and who would sit next to whom before the Hokage took his seat to begin the bidding process. Well, with the genin from previous cohorts who need to be reassigned teams, we have a total of 81 genin to assign. I'll assume you have each written down your bid, specifically the proposed specialization of the team, if any, plus 6 or 8 names of students you might like to teach. The Sandaime looked around. All the Jounin had been through this. A few knew Chunin in hand, but they hid their ignorance well. They were only there to offer advice anyway or their thoughts on the new genin. Let's start with support-type teams. Medical teams and the like. 3 Jounin raised their hands and the bidding started there. These Jounin knew who possessed the best chakra control in this group of genin. Sarutobi nodded when the teams came together. He marked it all down on a scroll in front of him. Anyone wishing to put together tracking teams? A few hands went up. The Jounin presented their lists and the teams got put together quickly. The Inyazuka quickly got snatched up by the former head of the Hunter Nins. How about infiltration or information retrieval teams? A small number of Jounin indicated that they wished to pass on their skills in this way. 3 new teams were settled quickly. Sandaime knew it was the next few categories that caused conflicts. Trackers were usually different from infiltrators. And none of those were usually best qualified for medic roles. However, heavy combat teams, stealth and assassination teams, and generalists often drew on the same types of people. How about stealth or assassination type teams? Only 2 hands rose up. Mitarashi Anko always wanted to start an assassination team, but her methods were a bit brutal, a bit like the former sensei she loathed so much. With the right people, she could be effective, but her last 3 students were up for reassignment at their request in this meeting. Anko, given what happened with your last team, you will be allowed to structure a generalist team. You will not use snakes at any point during training, nor will you intentionally wound any of your genin. Do you understand me? She looked pissed, but she lowered her hand. The other Jounin got his first choice. Alright, time for the fights. Heavy combat types. 6 Jounin raised their hands. And when they read off their lists, there was a lot of overlap. A lot. Naruto, for example, was on all 6 lists. The boy had shown off his shadow clone and finger of god techniques. Sarutobi Asuma, a wind user, one of the few in Konoha, seemed to recognize that the boy was already using elemental chakra and wanted him without explaining precisely why. Sarutobi could read his brilliant lazy son like an open book, however. Mitarashi Anko wanted him too. Her reason? She muttered, "Cause he seems to like to blow shit up." But it was said loud enough that Sarutobi heard it. Naruto would be an excellent demolitionist, but he was so much more. The other Jounin expressed their reasons. It was getting ridiculous. Sandaime blinked twice. Hold on. Before the brawling starts, how many of the remaining Jounin had Uzumaki Naruto, Narashikamaru, Komogi, the top Kunoichi, or either of the 2 Hyuga? Almost everyone's hand went up. Sandaime quickly went through and figured out how many wanted each of the remaining genin. A few teams were simple to put together. Yuuhi Kurenai, Jinjutsu Mistress, had picked out the best of those who demonstrated Jinjutsu. Her team was to be an experiment in ensuring that everyone had complementary skills, Jinjutsu, supplemented by individuals strong in Nin, Tai, or Kinjutsu. But Naruto, the 2 Hyuga, and the Naruboy were hard to place. It was frustrating that, save for Naruto, Jounin still competed for clan children. Bah. If only they knew Naruto's true heritage, they'd be salivating even more. Son of the Yondaime, container of a demon with never-ending chakra, a wind user with almost unparalleled potential. Finally, as day finally succumbed to night, the bidding was over. The teams were made, most of the Jounin were disappointed not to get their first choices, but happy enough overall. Compromise, after all, was tough to live with. The trick was to let people get what they wanted, while also ensuring that the teams were balanced and that the right sensei was in charge of each team. Not only to teach what he or she knew to the newly formed teams, but to fix the holes and weaknesses in their specific students' training regimens. A few of the Jounin in this crew were almost out of chances since they weren't natural teachers and weren't improving on their methods of instruction. Mitarashi Anko was at the top of that list, actually. It really would be best if all Jounin took a stint at the academy when they were chunin, perhaps it should be a new requirement. After all, aside from direct combat and running missions, a Jounin's most important task was teaching and mentoring. Those with superior skills had to adequately pass them on to the next generation. Food for thought, Sandaime mused as he walked from the room with a scroll listing the teams in his hand. Konoha was becoming more and more like the place Yondaime always dreamed it could be. The traitors inside the walls had been gone for a long time, or at least as many as could be found. But peace doesn't last. Sandaime realized that the enemies outside these walls would be regrouping. His greatest failure, his student Orochimaru, was likely plotting something horrifying, and I was still resented its loss in the last war, and Kumo, who knew what they were up to. Jiraiya and the other spy masters would be in his office tomorrow for the intelligence briefing. He'd hear more about the threat soon. Tonight, a bit of sake and an early bedtime. Old bones were tired bones, after all. Uchiha Itachi, the last of his clan, was known in Tea country as Biguru the Hunter. He had left the site of his parents' murder all those years ago with almost nothing. The clothing on his back, a few kunai, and no money. As an ordinary boy, he was unable to get a job. As an Uchiha, he was unable to ask for help or accept a place in a state orphanage. As an Avenger, he was unable to do anything but keep his body in shape and continuously improve his skills. Hence, Itachi had become a hunter. At age 8, he cleaned out several caches of bandits in Lightning Country. At age 10, he hunted Nukenin with moderate bounties in Earth Country. At age 13, he had blundered into a situation with an A-rank Nukenin from Hidden Mist. Itachi walked away with several heads, those he targeted and the one he didn't expect. Now, at age 17, he was in Tea country, in a small village far away from where any Nukenin might willingly go. It was where he came to heal after injuries and where he came to train in jutsu scrolls he stole from his targets and other targets of opportunity. Itachi had the most powerful technique known to the Uchiha, the Mangekyo Sharingan, but his first usage of it had scared him bleeding from his eyes. He used his Sharingan eyes only when an opponent proved challenging, worthy of being viewed through his special eyes, or when there was a technique of such brilliance, he had to learn it. The rabble died with one of the nearly 400 techniques he knew that he'd stolen from ninja before he killed them. He had no way of knowing if he was powerful enough yet, but his goal had never wavered. Orochimaru's death. He'd finally learned the name of the ninja who rode on snakes 3 years ago. Finding the man to challenge him was difficult, which is why Itachi was still alive. At the age of 14, Orochimaru would have batted Itachi away and fed him to a snake. But now Itachi was closer to his goal. His last battle, one conducted in the deserts of Wind Country, gave him hope. His targets were a team of 3 Nukenin, 2 from grass and 1 from waterfall. When he caught up to them, they were dead. The squat massive man stood over their bodies searching for something. "You stole the kill from me," Itachi had said. The ninja said nothing, but a massive tail made from metal streaked out and thudded into a kunai Itachi pulled out. This man was worthy of the Mangekyo Sharingan. It glowed to life and began spinning inside his otherwise black pupilless eyes. The ninja had twisted around by this time. The sight of the eyes had stilled him. You. Ichiha. You will be coming with me. I know someone who will be very interested in. I think not. His eye shot out black fire. It was hot enough to burn even metal. Then the whole man went up in flames. A hatch opened and a smaller man, an odd sort of man leaped out and away from the flames. What sort of trickery is this? Itachi asked, not expecting the answer. He had never seen such a thing, having never spent much time in this part of the world. The enemy ninja's response had been a flamethrower. Somehow mounted in his arm. What kind of butchery was that? Still, Uchiha Itachi, a master of fire techniques, was not impressed. He countered with his own flame breath technique. The flamethrower was just slightly less powerful than his flame breath. It was a powerful machine. Itachi rolled out of the way and closely observed the man. It seemed like filaments of chakra were emerging from his body in all directions. Something was happening. Itachi flickered away. The spot where he was came under attack by a mist of black-looking sand. That technique he had heard of. One of the Kazekage had used it, the one who had disappeared all those years ago. He had disappeared and gone to work with this odd ninja. The black sand danced every way. Itachi's could see every grain and predict what it would do. It also noticed an oddity about the black cloaked ninja. He carried something on his chest. Armor. A weapon. He threw a kunai and the ninja danced away, but not quite fast enough. It tore through the cloak, leaving the ninja's chest bare. There really was an odd thing on that man's chest. His hands flew into familiar seals and a fire flame dragon burst from Itachi's mouth. The moment it was out, Itachi was moving, using the fire as cover. He advanced 3 meters by the time the ninja dodged it. The black sand blasted through the area where Itachi had last stood. It didn't matter. A kunai went through the odd canister in the man's chest. From his back, the sharp blade pierced through to his chest. The Kazekage dropped to the ground like his strings had been cut. Like a puppet. Itachi finally realized. He had heard rumors a few years back about puppeteers in this part of the world. Still behind the ninja, he calmly asked, "What was your name?" "The one who killed me, no, I am called Sasori. Akasuna no Sasori. You fought well." It was Itachi's highest compliment. Every powerful ninja he killed got him closer to Orochimaru. When he'd left, Itachi had carried away the whole body, plus the Kazekage, plus the heads of the targets he had been chasing. He didn't head straight back to claim his bounties in grass and waterfall. No, he went further into the desert to hidden sand. The looks of fear, awe, and calculation he received after turning in the Sasori and the body of their third Kazekage were unnerving. But he accepted the massive bounties, did not dispute that he had just killed an S-rank ninja, and fled the village in the night. He dropped the name he'd been using and changed out his clothing for a completely new style. Itachi knew it wouldn't be long now. That ninja, Sasori, had fought Itachi once. He saw Sharingan eyes not to kill, but to capture. Itachi fought to kill, a much easier proposition. Eventually Itachi wouldn't fight to kill but to avenge, the highest calling he knew of. He was improving. He had only 4 battles this last year that required a Sharingan, and he'd copied another 17 interesting jutsu when he infiltrated various villages. For the most part, he was getting stronger by his own accomplishment. When Orochimaru died, Itachi wouldn't honor that man with even a glimpse of his Sharingan eyes. He would be strong enough that he wouldn't need the Sharingan at all. Orochimaru would never know why he'd died. The informal spy council gathered in Sarutobi's office at 7:30 in the morning, long before Jiraiya usually woke up to start peeping. But, like with Kakashi, Sarutobi did not permit any tardiness from any of his ninja. Konoha had long neglected spying on its enemies and allies. Jiraiya had done some work on his own during his travels, but he was mainly focused on news about Orochimaru. Only in the last 3 to 4 years had this handful of people finally gotten several independent networks, going focused on all threats, foreign and domestic. Jiraiya, Yumikoto, and Famada ran external fixed contact networks. Which meant they had spies in the various hidden villages and in other parts of the elemental countries. Using various means, Jiraiya used his toad summons to collect and forward reports. They collected all the publicly available information. Who had fallen out with whom, details about crop harvests, industrial capacity, and all sorts of other boring things that could eventually mean a lot. Some of their spies also had access to more classified information which they passed along when they could safely do so. For example, the news that the Raikage's cousin and likely successor had been debilitated while developing a new lightning jutsu. The political winds had shifted there as a result. The pacifist successor candidate was out and the new one hadn't been made public yet. The intelligence gathering inside Fire Country required more direct resources. One member of Ibiki's Anbu department supervised the capture and interrogation of missing ninjas who ventured into Fire Country. Given that Hidden Leaf had more than 200 active genin teams, plus 2300 chunin, and another 900 jounin level ninja, Fire Country was filled with ninja paying attention to the coming and going of everyone. Most properly motivated missing nin would reveal a lot about their former homes and other places they'd visited. Not everything would be true, but it could be used to verify or confirm other intelligence. A retired shinobi named Mata ran the small group that tracked and monitored merchants passing through Konoha. Trade patterns were a very useful method for verifying upcoming intelligence trends. Merchants who'd suddenly stopped going to rain sent up a red flag that something bad was happening there. The other 3 people in the room were active Anbu operatives and in full masks. Each of them ran programs to root out spies within Hidden Leaf. Orochimaru had managed to place a surprising number here, as had many other hidden villages. Jiraiya called this meeting, the Sandaime said, as soon as he walked in the door. Let's start with his update. The Toad Sage nodded, looking rather upset. It's taken a decade, but I've finally figured out where Orochimaru is. Sandaime, among others, leaned forward in frustrated curiosity. He founded a hidden village in Rice Country. I've heard that it's called Sound. Kumo seems to be a sponsor of some sort. The grumbling was quite loud. This wasn't the tonnage of vegetables produced in Hidden Waterfall, and trying to guess what it might mean for the future. This was real valuable intelligence. The question, though, was what to do with it. Sandaime asked a first question, this information is verified. I have pictures of one of the installations. Orochimaru was there. One of the counter-espionage heads said, we have been tracking a seeming genin named Kabuto. He's the adopted son of the head of Konoha Hospital. He's also been to Rice Country on 4 missions in the last 8 months, and we've only had 4 missions to Rice Country in that time, right? Jiraiya asked. The nod was the only reply. The group focused on counter-espionage knew what this likely meant. Who is this Kabuto's Jounin sensei? Hokage Mew, replied the counter-espionage specialist. Investigate him and the other teammates. Do a careful review of the hospital administrator. Let's have a discreet surveillance started as well, Sandaime said. It's awful that the more we look the more we find. The torture Anbu said, why would he build a hidden village? What does he want? Jiraiya made to speak, but Sarutobi held up his hand. He wants people to experiment upon and another way to power and perhaps a platform for attacking us, Sandaime said. I have spent a decade thinking on him, on my mistakes. We must strike him in a way he won't be able to predict. The meeting continued for another hour with the more ordinary reports. It gave the Sandaime a lot to consider. Konoha's enemies outside its walls were getting stronger. Their wrath would come eventually. That Sunday afternoon was quite sunny and Naruto had too much energy, as usual. Stop bouncing, boy, the Sandaime said to his student. Yes, sensei. He was still bouncing on the controlled air pocket underneath his feet. Even during training, Naruto knew to keep developing his chakra control. He would never be able to train as a medic nin or genjutsu specialist, but he was getting quite adept with wide area techniques. You made genin and will have a great Jounin sensei in Yamanaka Inoichi. I know. He seems like he knows a lot. Sarutobi had a slight scowl now. Naruto was still bouncing. He served in the Anbu for many years. He's a master of the mind, but his teams are very strong, very physical. He has trained 3 great teams now. You will do well to Naruto, stop bouncing. I'm too excited. I'm a genin. My first mission will begin tomorrow. Fine. You want to bounce. I'll beat it out of you. Sarutobi made a number of hand seals and slammed his blooded hand to the earth. A 5-foot-tall monkey appeared in a plume of smoke. Honored Sarutobi, how may I assist you? My student here needs a sparring partner. Show him a few things. It would be my pleasure, the monkey said, bowing. Then he turned to Naruto and withdrew a bow or staff weapon from out of nowhere. Naruto barely ducked the first blow and was hit by the second. The monkey was a bit taller than Naruto, but it hit a lot harder than Naruto could. The young ninja didn't cry out. No, he seemed to bite his tongue and get into the sparring. 10 minutes later a bleeding Naruto lay on the ground, smiling a bit but no longer bouncing. Is that out of your system? Sarutobi asked his student. Yes, old man. For as battered as he wasn't even out of breath. Sarutobi smiled at his summon and thanked him, dismissing him. Well, shall we finally get down to work? How am I ever going to beat him? Naruto asked absently as he got back to his feet. Sarutobi laughed. Yes, Marami is a tough one. But you said much the same thing when you first met Kiki and again when you were bested by Tadai. Remember, though, after Marami there are several more until you must finally learn to fight the Monkey King. Really? For some odd reason, that perked Naruto right back up. A strange boy, but an interesting one. If you start bouncing again, I'll introduce you today. Both my teachers were surprised when they met Enma he could fight them hand to hand at the same time, and he was as old then as I am now. He's an antique then, sensei. Sarutobi didn't rise to the bait. Naruto, show me this new technique. Yes, sensei. The young genin didn't bother with his mystifying fake seals in front of his sensei. All that he had been developing relied upon direct manipulation of air chakra. It was as if the air wanted to respond to him, like he was a magnet commanding metal filings wherever and however he wanted. Sarutobi watched the tiny signs that wind chakra was forming up. Slight rippling distortions, it seemed like the finger of God all over again. How was this different? Then the earth exploded in front of Sarutobi. Quite a bit pelted his clothing and landed in his hair, now that he wasn't wearing his ceremonial hat. A deep, circular trench formed in his once whole training ground. But Naruto, how did you use wind chakra to do this? And how have you been practicing without the Anbu noticing? The blonde boy smiled. Well, sensei, the fist of God is a whole bunch of wind blades in a circle around my target. Then I send them at the target, wave after wave, at an angle. The air only goes in so far, but then the next blade goes in further. And then, finally it looks like a giant's angry fist smashed down into the earth. Sarutobi nodded. That it does. Now, where have you practiced this technique? Naruto fidgeted a bit and then mumbled. Excuse me? Speak more clearly. I said, I went into the forest of death, just the very outside part. That could have been a disaster, the Hokage realized. It wouldn't do at all for Naruto to be injured just so he could have some privacy to develop a technique. Not again, do you understand? Not there. I will find some place private and safe. At our next meeting, I will have an answer for you. Thank you, sensei. I am just amazed, Naruto. It felt like a strange Earth-style technique, or maybe someone burying exploding notes underground. I wonder. What do you expect to do with this technique? Naruto got a bit bashful here. He seemed so old with the other students and so young when he was alone with the Hokage. The Sandaime wondered which, if either, was the true Naruto. I didn't have a purpose when I tried it, but it'd be awesome for making a trench or taking out a powerful, slow-moving enemy, or I guess I could make a swimming pool if I ever get a house. The Sandaime bopped Naruto on the head with his pipe. Be serious. We only have a few minutes left today. Yes, sensei. Now that I think about it, this could be a useful technique. Next week we will go to a spot more receptive to being blown up. We shall experiment a bit. Until then, Naruto, no more work on this. I think it is time you learn a few more defensive techniques, right? Your arsenal leans pretty heavy towards kill everything now. That's true, sensei. Naruto said, proud as could be. Now then, you will work on an earth-style and a water-style defense. That should give you a nice challenge after spending so much effort on the wind. Pick two that seem interesting from the Shinobi archive. I know you know your way around the place since you've been sneaking in for 2 years. Go in through the front door this time, right? I will. Sarutobi gestured the young ninja away while he lapsed into thought. He was thought of as the strongest ninja in the village and likely still was, but he had always seen himself as a teacher up until the Nidaime's death. It felt good to teach again. In the past, he'd just spoken with his ninja about their experiments and offered a few hints here and there. Like with Kakashi. He'd seemed perfectly content with his Chidori as it was, but the Sandaime had pushed him a bit and asked him several questions Kakashi couldn't answer. Last the Hokage had heard, Kakashi was working on his Chidori again. That made Hokage glad. After all, a complacent ninja was a dead ninja. But, while little bits of mentoring like that were nice, teaching more actively made him feel young again. Happy. Why had he waited for so long to try this? Then he remembered the face of a pale genius of a ninja. A twisted man that Sarutobi had helped become powerful to everyone's detriment. Naruto wasn't Orochimaru, though. He was the will of fire personified with a smiling, goofy, undignified face. Hinata remembered her name. She remembered the face, but not the name, of her mother. She knew she had a younger sister, but could not remember what she looked like. Her father seemed a distant blur in her memory. For the last 7 years, she had lived in this strange building. Her guardians were curt, but they did not hurt her. Until that day when they took her into a cold room she had never seen before. She was made to undress, and her feet were placed in cold metal socks or something. Then a woman doctor parted her legs and locked them into place while she examined her down there. The doctor had pushed something inside her. Hinata had been made to stay in that uncomfortable position for hours. Then she'd redressed and been given dessert for dinner that night. 4 months later she had become fat. When she asked her guardians if she was eating too much, she was told she would be having a baby. A baby? How would she have a baby? They did not explain. They did not tell her how long it would be, or that it would hurt, or that once she had her baby, she would never get to see him again. Now she was pregnant again. Her belly was fat. She remembered that she was 12 years old now and her name was Hinata. But beyond that, she didn't know anything. But she didn't want to have a baby again and not be able to see him or her. She needed to do something besides cry. The Sandaime enjoyed many parts of his job, especially watching the young shinobi grow stronger. The young Inyazuka boy had grown by leaps and bounds once he got away from books and began doing practical missions. Naruto, well, he was a genius of hard work. Had the Sandaime had the sorts of chakra control problems and such in his past that Naruto once did, it was unclear whether he'd have grown as strong as he did. But Naruto was becoming a ninja worthy of praise. Less worthy of praise, however, was politics. The Hokage had never loved the political parts of his job, such as meeting with the fire daimyo. Since the council had been dissolved, the man came himself once or twice a year to review the hidden village. Within Fire Country, they were equals under the law. But the daimyo knew he could throw a samurai army against the Hokage and still lose. The hidden village had power and both sides knew it. The daimyo, a retired samurai, needed to keep good relations with the ninja leader. This was one of those trips. The sandaime stood as the daimyo entered his office, greeting the shorter, heavier man as an equal. The Hokages flicked down to the mission summary on his desk. He'd been keeping tabs on Naruto again. Normally a C-rank mission report wouldn't even touch his desk. But the sandaime had asked Inoichi for a personal copy of each report. Naruto was coming along nicely, so far it seemed that sandaime had picked the right sensei for the boy. Yamanaka Inoichi was a taskmaster, a perfectionist and the almost exact opposite of Naruto when on a mission. It was good for Naruto to learn from someone who wouldn't put up with his antics as the sandaime often did. Discipline wasn't one of the things that the sandaime excelled in teaching, unfortunately. How have you been, daimyo-sama? Well. Very well. Now that business in Wave is done with, I have many fewer problems. The daimyo apparently wanted that kind of a conversation. He was here to extract secret information. I understand. Trade is the lifeblood of a nation, is it not? It was a good thing you did. A team of 4 jounin to clean up that Gedo mess. Of course, the daimyo's spies had found this out. The ninja Sarutobi sent to deal with the Gedo Corporation hadn't used cover names. It wasn't client requested, of course, but it will pay for itself. Wave used to be a very good customer up until a few years ago, then that moron moved in. With our good neighbor policy, we had to take action. And, of course, you'll never comment on what happened to the billions Gedo was rumored to have. Sandaime smiled. He hammed up being very old, infirm, and deaf. Excuse me, sir, but you'll have to speak up. My great old age has robbed me of my hearing. Fine, then, I'll just have to lop off a chunk of funding in honor of your windfall. The joking threat meant nothing to Konoha. Less than 2% of Konoha's budget came from the daimyo's largesse. Indeed, since he had formed an illicit wealth retrieval team 7 years, one that stole money from bandits, yakuza, thieves, and the very wealthy who chose to live outside Fire Country, he had no problem balancing his budget. If you need the money for other projects, daimyo-sama, feel free. We've been completely profitable for 7 years, laying aside your subsidy, but not the fees for the missions we perform for you. The heavy-set man nodded, a bit weary. I think I knew that. Having a bit of a reserve in case of trouble is a smart idea. The man was trying to get an idea of how much Konoha was sitting on. Sarutobi wasn't about to speak on that topic. We will likely be coming up against some difficulties soon, I fear. The rumors are flying about old alliances falling apart and new ones coming together. The bunch of the weak coming to attack the strongest. Sandaime nodded. Ever since we assassinated the Mizukage unofficially, of course, and stopped that awful civil war, other hidden villages have been leery of us. You've also dealt with the thugs in Water, Wave, and 5 other countries. That Gedo fellow, Kurikin the arms manufacturer, and Yanzo of Yanzo Pharmaceuticals, the largest drug kingpin of his time. Ought to send some shivers down some backs. The daimyo's spies had obviously uncovered less than 10% of the Hokage's recent wealth retrieval activities. The list was much longer and more star-studded than these. It was inevitable. But we couldn't be strong when our borders were so weak. The daimyo nodded and reached for a cup of tea. I won't ask for details. I do understand security concerns, after all. But I was curious if you'd heard anything from your friends in Hidden Rain. I haven't heard from their daimyo in some time either, even though he is supposed to host the next Chunin examination. And I've not gotten a letter from their military head for some time. Sandaime shook his head. I have not heard from Hanzo in quite some time. He's nearly as old as I am and even gave my students the title of the legendary 3 ninja. We have heard about disruptions in merchants coming and going, and that is often the first we know about a civil war, the daimyo said. I will snoop around with the other daimyos and see if anyone else is willing to have their country host the examinations. Much appreciated. The conversation continued for another hour on lighter topics, but Sandaime was more concerned than ever about Hidden Rain. 1 month after the Fire Daimyo's visit, Sandaime got a coded letter, and the implications were not good. Sandaime pointed to the Anbu stationed in his office. Please find me Jiraiya. He should be within a day's walk by now, but I need to move up our meeting. The badger-faced Anbu nodded and quickly left the room. It was that afternoon when he was able to convene his spy council once more. The Fire Daimyo has basically been forced by the Wind and Lightning Daimyos into hosting the Chunin exam, but it's not our turn in the rotation, Jiraiya said. Precisely why I called this meeting. Hidden Rain is out of contact and unable to meet its obligation. Instead of heading to the next village in the rotation, two daimyos who positively hate each other have banded together, possibly at the request of the Kazekage and the Reikage, and asked the fire daimyo something strange. Odd things that rarely happen are happening. Sarutobi did not like this one bit. People are looking for a reason to have lots of foreigners in Konoha. Spy missions are worse, said Jiraiya's colleague Famata. I have not heard anything about this yet, but in the weeks to come I may. And if you don't, Jiraiya said, then your network and mine might be compromised. I've discovered one purveyor of misinformation already. Seems Orochimaru knew what to look for when setting up his own counter-espionage operations. That would give us less than 9 months to figure out what this means and prepare for the unknown, Sandaime said. I don't like it. I don't like risking the village and the 25,000 mostly defenseless civilians here, plus our ninja forces, just to see what Orochimaru and his allies are up to. One of the counter-espionage agents finished reading the letter and passed it along. I should report that the Anbu watching the Genin called Kabuto were attacked. 1 died and 2 are badly wounded. Damn, Jiraiya said. Orochimaru must have cracked some of my codes. I was having an agent discreetly ask around about this Kabuto. He had spent a good deal of time in hidden sand at one point. I will send the paperwork to have him declared enemy of the state, the Hokage said. It was a far more dire designation than just missing Nin. It was used for infiltrators and betrayers, people who deserved no trial and should be killed in the field. The room fell silent while the rest read the daimyo's letter. A few began talking quietly about the situation, while most of them just tried to digest what all this might mean. Eventually Jiraiya got a smile on his face. Village hidden in the leaves, he said. Sandaime looked at his former student with impatience. Yes, that's where we are. No, that's what we're called. But we're not actually very hidden. Hidden Waterfall has its entrance hidden by a waterfall. Hidden Cloud is so high up in the mountains that usually clouds obscure the view. In comparison, we're just sitting out in plain sight. We can't hide the village, someone muttered. We can and we will, Jiraiya said. We have someone with a transplanted Mokutan bloodline. We can make the forest more dense, change the roads leading in and out of Hidden Leaf, but make sure that they reach a decoy of a town, a second Konoha, the one that will be attacked. How would that work? The maps of Fire Country show the roads very clearly, Famata said. We will have to stage something that makes our changes plausible. A natural disaster, perhaps a large-scale forest fire. But how do you fake a new Hokage monument? It's impossible. Asked one of the masked Anbu. We grow a new mountain if we need to. We will protect this village. Sandaime looked worried and interested at the same time. It will be difficult to keep a secret like that from tens of thousands of civilians who expect to be able to leave the village whenever they wish, plus many thousand shinobi. Hey, the idea just occurred to me. I didn't say it was perfect or that it would be easy. The room fell into silence. It was an appealing idea on many levels. A trap designed to destroy the enemy and leave Konoha proper out of harm's way. Conceptually elegant, it would be very challenging to pull off. This meeting dragged on long into the night before a consensus was finally reached. 9 months later, the Kazekage had a big smile on his normally grim face when he finally sighted Konoha. It had been a long, dry trip from Suna, twice as long as the journey from Oto to Konoha, but he had to keep up appearances, lest he tip his hand to what he'd done to the real Kazekage. He had enjoyed chasing and nearly capturing the third-year genin Uchiha Mamoru, one of the very last Uchiha. Sure, he'd slaughtered the rest of the clan himself all to gain their very special copying eyes. Possessing their eyes, as Orochimaru now did, wasn't as useful as he'd hoped. Many of them were ruined because of poor extraction. What few were appropriate had to travel a long distance between where they were harvested and where they could be implanted in Orochimaru's experiments. He'd wound up with only a single transplant, and that host was supremely weak. Sickly, barely able to leave the restricted hospital ward. Too bad most orphans contract diseases that damage them for life. Orochimaru wasn't willing to live in a weak host, not even for the Sharingan. Unfortunately, his hunt in that dense pocket of forest for Mamoru had gone south when 3 teams of Anbu showed up. It seemed his former sensei Sarutobi wasn't as senile as was generally believed. It hadn't taken him long to understand that the Anbu had been monitoring chakra output throughout the forest. Orochimaru's summonings of snakes and other high-level jutsu had stuck out like a sore thumb. No matter. He would get his chance to gift Uchiha Mamoru with the cursed seal in time. He walked through the streets and thought that Konoha had really gone all out. This place probably hadn't looked this clean since the Shodaime Hokage built the place in one night. The streets, the walls, everything immaculate. The genin teams had likely been doing cleaning missions for months inside the village. Oh, right, it was now academy students who did such work. The spies were nothing if not thorough. Konoha had really gone to some trouble. Outside the walls they'd even fixed up the former pathway and had someone grow in some new trees, extra massive and imposing. Who knew who they were trying to impress, but the town would be in cinders in a few short hours. The Kazakage looked around and was able to see where the wall had been destroyed during the massive earthquakes preceding the Kyuubi attack more than a decade earlier. The wall looked strong, but a failed section, even repaired by the best, was always a weakness. Suna would attack from outside through that segment of wall. The massive snake summons would create a second front in another part of the village. His backers from Hidden Cloud had declined to attack Hidden Leaf directly, but they were setting up a cordon 10 miles out to keep anyone from escaping or any reinforcements from getting in. It would be the most lovely sort of slaughter. He licked his lips in anticipation. His former sensei dead for depriving him of the Hidden Leaf he deserved to rule. The villagers slaughtered, the buildings on fire and in ruins, all the ninja of the most powerful ninja force around killed. 3 armies with a combined force of 10,000 could always defeat 1 army with perhaps 5,000. Simple mathematics plus Orochimaru had surprise on his side. He looked around as his disguised sound ninja waited patiently to pass through ineffective security screenings. Some posed as merchants wishing to trade, others as ninja from grass or other hidden villages wishing to see the tournament, others as wishing to visit people who lived in Hidden Leaf. The army from Sand was gathering, the army from Cloud would begin the land blockade in 2 hours. There would be no survivors. After getting settled into the arena 30 minutes before the tournament began, the Kazakage was joined by his former mentor, Sarutobi. The two chatted briefly. The arena filled up rapidly once the doors to the general public opened. Orochimaru's sound ninja made up probably 10 or 20% of the audience. It was hard to tell as general tickets were sold by lottery. The first matches began as an odd ninja named Rock Lee went up against one of Sound's best genin, Dosu. The green-clad ninja pounded the ever-loving Kami out of Dosu. He just wouldn't stay put long enough for a sound attack to work against him. Too bad this Rock Lee would soon be dead. Speed like that wasn't something many ninja ever developed. Orochimaru watched and gloated but never thought about his men outside. His sound ninja, disguised in many different ways, found a few dozen impenetrable barriers throughout the city. These checkpoints were definitely not on their maps. "Excuse me, my friend lives 4 blocks down that way," a disguised ninja said. The guard shook his head. "Sorry. We had an assassination attempt on the Hokage last night. We didn't have enough time to postpone the Chunin exam finals, otherwise the whole village would be locked down." The sound ninja was rather nervous. It felt like someone had tipped their hand. Not good at all. Who would do such a thing? Rumor is the assassin was from Iowa. The sound ninja nodded and hoped that this unexpected interference wouldn't screw things up too badly. "Can I at least get a message through so my friend will come and meet me? You can use a telephone. That hotel over there has some on the ground floor. Thank you." Of course, the sound ninja's friend didn't exist except as a convenient excuse for getting close to one of Hidden Leaf's armories and destroying it at the proper time. Back in the stadium, Orochimaru leaned over and said, "This Kunoichi is better than I would have expected." She was a rookie genin. Sandaime Hokage just smiled and nodded. "She's quite good. Much has changed since I was last here." Indeed, even the road paths and such seemed different. The Hokage nodded. "We had a dry summer and then a series of lightning storms. We lost almost 70 acres of our forest, so we had to reroute the roads while we extinguished the fires. We haven't bothered to repair the old destroyed roads yet. It was touch and go for a while, the flames got within a few hundred meters of the northern walls." "I see. Plus a different route is better for security anyway. Should have done that years ago. In Suna, we have no trees to hide behind. But it's probably easier to hide in the sand, especially with the powerful wind users you possess." The Kazakage just nodded. Gaara's match was approaching. That would set off the whole thing. The wait was delicious torture. Gaara arrived on the arena floor and began tearing into his opponent, and nobody named Uzumaki. The only thing was that Gaara wasn't doing any damage to the boy. The boy had managed to block a variety of attacks and even harm the Sand Jinchuriki, but he had taken no damage himself. What sort of ninja was this boy? Even Orochimaru would have a tough time dealing with that sand. His intelligence network back into his old home had kept many things from him, it seemed. Sarutobi had been ruthless in ferreting out spies. Who knew the kind-hearted man had it in him? The Kazakage gave the signal and the sound ninja began casting the sleeping Jinjutsu. It seemed to catch even Sarutobi for a moment before the old man's brow furrowed and he looked around. Now what could that be? The old Hokage wondered aloud. "Your death, old man." The Kazakage grabbed onto the old man and jumped to the top of the arena. His bodyguard soon appeared and trapped the pair inside an impenetrable shield. "Nice to see you, my student. I had wondered when you'd show your face again." "You knew?" This had Orochimaru stumped. How was this result possible?" He lunged forward to attack. "I have good people working for me, Orochimaru. I trust them and they prove time and again that they've earned my trust. We've been tracking you for years and know a lot of your secrets. We weren't sure exactly what you intended for us, but bringing a crazed Jinchuriki sure makes it clear, right? Die, old man, die." One lunge with his grass cutter cut into sarutobi and a massive quantity of blood began to spurt out. Lots more blood than should have been possible. When the droplets flicked into Orochimaru's clothing, they began to burn. Quickly, efficiently, right down to the skin. A blood clone. You planned a counter-attack to my invasion. Orochimaru couldn't understand what had happened. 9 months to prepare and my advisors are insane, but insane geniuses. This isn't even Konoha, but a mock-up made for you, that was all the blood clone was able to say before it exhausted its chakra. All the remaining blood scattered. Orochimaru's face began to burn. Retreat. It's a trap. Unfortunately for the invading army, Orochimaru was just about the last person to discover this fact. Using tons of cow blood laced with acids and poisons, the entire mock-up of Konoha was staffed with blood clones. None of them defended themselves when attacked. A single bleeding clone could take out a dozen nearby attackers. Then the various ore grates began pumping out a powerful knockout gas. Only moments later the army from Suna burst through the walls and were confronted with the devastation in front of them. Their general ordered a retreat, but anyone inside the walls found they couldn't leave. Some sort of massive sealing array allowed everything in and nothing out. 37 minutes after the invasion begun, every attacker was dead or unconscious. It took a few more hours to deal with the Cloud Ninja who were attempting a blockade. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all the survivors were in special cells in the newly constructed prison complex, built underneath the mock-up of Konoha, the place where all the real ninja had been waiting to attack their enemies. The hardest to hold were that Gaara ninja who'd fought a blood clone of Sarutobi's, under a hinge to make him look like Naruto, and Orochimaru himself. Both cells were rigged with poison gas should either attempt to escape. It wasn't very humane, but neither was attempting to invade and destroy a village. A few days later, Sarutobi had the medic Nin stop the intravenous drip that kept Orochimaru unconscious. He wanted to see his student. He wanted to get some answers. 2 hours later Orochimaru was conscious and trying to escape. Sarutobi created a blood clone and watched the interrogation from the safety of his office. A scrying stone was useful for things other than peeping, after all. The clone's mere presence might be enough to enrage his former student. "Wake up, little snake, I know you're awake," the blood clone said. Eventually the heavily wounded Snake Sanin lifted his head as much as he was able and opened his eyes. "Gloating doesn't work for you, sensei. No gloating. Just time for interrogation. You would stoop to do such a thing yourself." Jiraiya begged for the opportunity, but I wanted to see if you'd be reasonable before giving him the chance to crush you with his toads. Orochimaru tried to laugh, but it hurt too much. "I was a fool to coddle you so much, my student. I was the genius of my generation and so I favored the genius of your generation, but it was Jiraiya who proved to be the best ninja. I wish you had been a better person, a trustworthy person. I would have loved to made you Hokage, but Namikaze was an exceptional ninja and loyal to the village." Hatred filled Orochimaru's already ugly visage. "I deserved it. No, you were on the path to earning it, then you fell from the path. There is a difference." Orochimaru became quiet then. He was obviously plotting something. The blood clone wasn't getting to the core questions Sarutobi wanted answered, but there was no way to control one directly. Safety at the cost of frustration. A Sharingan, Orochimaru. It was worth enough to kill all those people. Not yet, it isn't. My techniques weren't good enough yet. That poor genin you batted around in the forest, you were going to kidnap him. Something like that, yes. Sarutobi, watching from his office, wondered why Orochimaru would admit to something like that. It must be part of a plan. A cooperative Orochimaru might seem like a broken Orochimaru, but he'd prove himself defiant in the end. I also had heard you'd given up your solitary ways and joined a little social club, one that liked black cloaks with red clouds on them. Coo. You've heard of Akatsuki, then? Jiraiya is twice the fool I thought he was." The Sarutobi, that made no sense. Why was Jiraiya a fool for discovering them? What would you want enough to put up with other people? I want and will always want power. I use them to view and steal other methods, other types of power. They were mere puppets for my plans. And yet you're in this room with me and they're still alive. But you will not be. I will destroy you." Somehow, even with his head restrained, he was able to propel a long tongue out of his head and snap off Sarutobi's head. The blood clone squirted for a few seconds before disappearing. The Sandaime Hokage knew he'd never get anything from Orochimaru alive, so it was time to end this and send that diseased body off to the experts. Perhaps they could figure out all the things he'd done, the places he'd been. Sitting in his office, with a small tear in his eye, he pressed a button. Seconds later, Orochimaru's cell filled with a poisonous purple gas. The health monitors on Orochimaru's body reported it took him 5 minutes to succumb to poisons which were usually fatal within seconds. Even still, he left the room filled with gas for another hour before he had the room cleared. He didn't know what sort of surprises Orochimaru could pull. The medical orderlies who retrieved the man's body were under orders to behead him before removing the restraints. Even Orochimaru would find it hard to function without a brain, right? Sarutobi watched as the beheading happened and then a snake-like worm shot out of the body. Thankfully more than one of the med nins had been expecting something odd. A quick electrocution jutsu and the worm stopped moving. Sarutobi had shivers down his back. His former student had experimented on others, destroying them. He had done something to himself, turning his true form into a giant mobile snotball. What was wrong with him? How had he gone so foul? Now Sarutobi turned his attention to the Suna and Kumo ninja. What to do with them? Kill them, ransom them back to bankrupt their home nations, slap seals on them to make them involuntary slaves. There were a range of options, all more horrifying than the last. And what to do about Iwa? It hadn't participated in this disaster, but it was still an enemy. Indeed, Sarutobi had held off for so long publicly revealing Naruto's status as the son of the late Yondaime, just because of Iwa, because he didn't want to subject the boy to assassination attempts, just because of a father he'd never been able to meet. Now, though, it was a different story. Naruto would likely become a Chunin once the real Chunin selection exam's final round was played out in a few weeks. And he was a stronger ninja at 12 than Sarutobi himself had been. His Wrath of God technique, something he thought up after eating dinner in a cheap restaurant in Casino City, it was truly terrifying. The boy didn't thirst after knowledge, as Sarutobi had. No, he was all about making things work. A different kind of ninja, rather like his practical-minded father. Sandaime would have to make his plan official. He would do as Jiraiya had requested and make Naruto the Toad Sannin's apprentice. Sarutobi would keep giving him lessons as time allowed, but the boy was becoming skilled in developing jutsu that only he would be able to use. In 1 month, Uzumaki Naruto would be recognized as Namikaze Naruto. And his life would change. Hidden Leaf would change. Of course, for safety, no one would know about Kyuubi unless they were willing to accept a secrecy seal. It was too big a military secret even to this day. Yes. Helping the boy develop a public legend while allowing him to keep his original technique secret for a while longer. Jiraiya would be useful for that. It would also help position Naruto as a possible successor. That made Sarutobi happy. Now if the boy would just take up an interest in sealing and perhaps recreate the Hiruzen. If it were possible, even Sarutobi knew it was unlikely. Naruto was a tremendous student, but sealing was too much book work for someone as active and physical as he was. Questions for another day, Sarutobi mused. Hopes for the future. It was time to shock the village and get it headed back to greatness. He was old and only had a small amount of time left, a few years probably. He had to make the most of the time. Itachi was in hidden grass when he overheard frenzied whispers of two Jounin in a ninja bar. He was killed. He walked into Hidden Leaf ready to slaughter them, and he was captured and killed. That bastard. My father tells a story when the snake bastard was still a leaf ninja. That was all Itachi's brain heard. He filled in the rest. There was a plausible rumor that Orochimaru was dead. Anger coated his normally impassive face, but just for a moment. He needed confirmation. If his target was dead, then he didn't know quite what to do. Hatred had made him strong, and now the target was dead. What came after? He quashed the question. That was for the future. Now he needed facts. It felt strange to take a seat in this arena, Sarutobi mused. After all, 5 weeks ago this place was used as an ambush for Orochimaru and the forces from Suna and Kumo. The attempted invasion had changed several leaf policies. After all, the walls here were based on those in Konoha. Everyone had seen how easily large summons had brought huge sections down. A terrifying jolt of reality. For one, foreign ninja weren't allowed inside Konoha. Diplomatic meetings took place in one of the buildings in the converted mock-up. Tournaments like this one took place in the refashioned arena. Foreign traders took up free stalls here. Villagers from the Leaf flocked here on trading days. Now that they had to leave the village, it seemed like a more interesting task, and trade had actually picked up, even with the more inconvenient arrangements. Perhaps, with time, that would fade. The day, strange as it was the true final round of the Chunin selection exam. All the remaining nations in the tournament understood precisely the reasons for the delay, even if the civilians and others had less of a clear picture. The daimyos in attendance had large contingents of bodyguards, still more than a bit spooked that Orochimaru might return from the grave. Having personally set the body alight and kept the fire going for quite some time, Sarutobi knew that his one-time student was truly dead. He looked at the match board and thought it strange and wonderful. 6 of the 10 finalists were from Hidden Leaf, and 5 of them were rookies. Normally few genin teams found their Jounin sensei willing to nominate them after receiving so little experience, but 6 of the new teams had been entered, and all had done respectably. Perhaps it was time to look at this long-standing tradition. It held that rookies should rarely participate, needing more time to grow, but conversely that few genin should attend more than 2 of these tournaments in order to build their experience level. Sarutobi had long wondered if the 2 prongs were more than a bit at cross purposes. Those who did not pass after 2 tries would have to wait for merit promotions later, as the Chunin selection exam was primarily to honor young geniuses and to make the various hidden villages seem greater than they might be because of a powerful genin here or there. Politics keeping the civilians and daimyos entertained this had once perhaps served its purposes, but now Sarutobi had been less interested in maintaining tradition for tradition's sake. Perhaps the foreign tournaments held some value, as Sarutobi believed was possible from a well-constructed tournament, but they were insufficient for handling Chunin promotions. 95% of all Konoha Chunin had risen in level thanks to a merit promotion, not as a result of this tournament. That was a broken system. Sarutobi's eyes tracked down to the proctor. The test was ready. Ahem, thank you for attending. Today's matches have been pre-selected and the combatants notified. They have had 2 months to prepare for this day, so we should expect some marvelous battles today. Sarutobi smiled as the first Konoha ninja took the field. Nara Shikamaru slumped out of the waiting area while Kento of the Grass walked like a ninja should. Shikamaru was, hopefully, setting his opponent up for a surprise. The battle began. Kento drew a katana and wiped its blade with a cloth. Sarutobi recognized the gesture as a standard from Grass Country, that blade was poisoned. With what, only Kento knew for sure. Shikamaru had a harder task. In order to win, he could not be hit and needed to take down a Kenjutsu specialist. It seemed a boring match until people realized, as Kento did not, that Shikamaru was avoiding a fight in order to waste his opponent's energy. The boy was obviously planning something. And then, as Kento's anger got the better of him, a shadow struck out from Shikamaru's body, and Kento was stuck. Shikamaru raised his left arm, and Kento's right arm rose of its own volition. Shikamaru manipulated his own arm, as if he were carrying a sword and about to commit seppuku. Kento began to sweat as his sword turned against him. "Do you concede?" Shikamaru asked. "Yes. Yes, I concede." The proctor declared Shikamaru the winner. The boy released the shadow, wobbled a bit and then slouched off the field. Kento, shaken by his improbable loss, secured his blade and walked off, a bit more humble than he had come onto the field. Now. Inyazuka Kiba vs Hyuga Banta. Sarutobi was surprised that this Hyuga had made it into the finals when Miss Hai, the Hyuga's latest pride and joy, held a better reputation. He watched with interest as the Hyuga took up the standard gentle fist forms. Why had the Hyuga gone through so much tumult only to insist on the old methods, the old traditions? Well, stood stock still with his partner animal at his side. Both were waiting for the other. Good. They had been trained in caution, especially important for one as impetuous as the Inyazuka boy could be. Finally it began. The dog ran forward, as if instructed, and then the Inyazuka. Sarutobi lost a bit of interest as it turned into a decoy and attack routine. When the Hyuga turned to face his human opponent, the dog would nip as his calf muscle. So the Hyuga would have to deal with the dog, then Kiba would strike. It went on and on, the Hyuga using his gentle fist, but finding a dog's tenketsu system utterly alien when compared to a human's. He didn't know how to stop the vicious but rather amusing little animal. Finally, Kiba managed a good solid punch. The Hyuga was taken down by a taijutsu practitioner who was less skilled, less refined than he was. And the Inyazuka had held nearly all of his clan attacks in reserve for future matches. Yes, he was becoming formidable. Winner. Inyazuka Kiba. Now, we offer Suna's Tamari vs Leaf's Uzumaki Naruto. Sarutobi smiled at this. While the matches were supposed to be random, Sarutobi had scheduled this random match himself. Naruto, his prized student, had never battled against another wind user. He wanted the boy to have that opportunity in a safer venue than a battlefield. But it seemed that the Wind Mistress did not wish for anything to be done safely. She obviously resented still being held by the Leaf and her likely status as a permanent hostage. Of course, she was still legally a Suna citizen until the various daimyos and Sarutobi hammered out a written agreement. But the girl was angry. Her opening move against Naruto was opening her fan to its fullest size and batting a powerful wind attack at him. She didn't think to wonder why the blonde guy just smiled and did not bother to get out of the way. The blast of air tore through the arena, and when it struck the floor, it sent up rock and stone and everything else. When the dust cleared, Tamari had mounted her fan and was preparing to leave, as no one could survive such an attack. Sarutobi smiled and wished he had wagered more on Naruto's eventual win. This was as dramatic as it got. The young ninja was still standing in place and smiling. A semicircle of untouched floor lay in front of him. He was making a point, but how? Nothing Naruto knew was a wind defense as this seemed to be. Indeed, while wind techniques were known for being destructive, what Naruto had come up with, especially his Wrath of God technique. Sarutobi's face broke into a full smile. The boy had done it. That horrifying technique Wrath used his control over air to separate air and leave a void in its place. The boy could create a vacuum. An opponent punching into such a void would receive horrible frost burns and would have blood vessels exploding under his skin. Had Naruto ever positioned a wrath attack over an opponent, the air would be pulled from his lungs instantly, and the air bubbles in the bloodstream would increase in size as the pressure outside decreased. Within moments, the person would be a bloody mess, the most horrifying individual technique Sarutobi had ever heard of, again invented by mistake. But now, it seemed Naruto had learned to mold a thin layer of a vacuum, like the outer shell of a large gumball, all around the area where an opponent might attack. Such a thing could absorb wind, fire, anything, so long as Naruto could maintain this wrath shield. Sarutobi looked at his fellow Hokages and counterparts from the other villages. None of them knew what had happened or why. With such a technique, the boy was unstoppable. Naruto had just showed everyone he would eventually rise to Hokage level power, and none of them yet realized it. The boy might be a bit ill-mannered in an amusing way, but he understood discretion. He would never tell anyone how to replicate his techniques. The Hokage also doubted that Naruto would ever use the wrath technique directly on another shinobi, unless he meant to kill them. This day, this public in attendance had witnessed the pronouncement. A legend will rise here. A chill ran down the Sandame's spine. Naruto's father had used Jutsu to become unstoppable, a complex art that took him almost 7 years from start to a usable model. Naruto had developed this wrath power by accident and then kept playing with it until it really was worth something. To have the power over individual molecules of air, to move them, to create temporary vacuums or pockets of great air density, perhaps dense enough to stop projectiles, the Hokage wondered, this was the power of a true wind master. And no one recognized this masterwork. Not yet. With luck, Naruto's true strength would remain hidden for some time to come. Anonymity equals safety, after all, to a ninja. Himari, on the arena floor, was the most confused. Her most powerful attack had hit everywhere around the kid, but not the target himself. How? She didn't get the chance to be confused for long. Naruto ran to her and began attacking with his fists and feet. The first punch, Himari screamed a bit as the punch not only hurt, but it somehow covered her upper arm and back in deep bleeding cuts. The kick to her belly had her doubled over in pain. There was blood everywhere. A few more blows and she wasn't willing or able to get up again, even her battle fan had been destroyed by the boy stepping on it. Sarutobi nodded as he watched. The boy's own Taijutsu style, not so different from the academy version, included fashioning wind in his fists and feet. The punches hurt and the wind tore at the same time. To perform this technique was a testament to the boy's mastery of the air. He formed up these thin air blades just a moment before the blow landed and dispelled them just after they'd struck. It was a marvel of timing and control. Indeed, his control would permit him to fight like this for almost an hour against training dummies before his body would feel the stress. The proctor had not heard a forfeit. But he knew when a battle was ended. The blonde boy had stopped attacking and was waiting to be declared the winner. The proctor did so, and then Naruto himself knelt down and helped to pick up his opponent and carry her to the medic nins. None of the wounds were fatal, although Sarutobi expected the boy could have made them so had he been in the proper state of mind. The gesture, contrasted against Himari's mean-spirited first and only attack, drew applause. The proctor waited for the noise to clear before declaring. Now, we have Aburame Shino versus Sato of the Waterfall. The match was an unfortunate pairing for the young Aburame. Sato was a gifted user of water techniques and Genjutsu. The Aburame had some Taijutsu skill, but relied on his Kikai bugs. And bugs were easily drowned. A few minutes later, Shino conceded defeat. Our final round 1 match. Komogi vs Hiruzen Kunyo from River Country. Sarutobi sat forward for this one. It had been a long time since an independent shinobi like this Hiruzen had made it to the finals. Most ninja, but not all, came from hidden villages. There were still clans out there who trained their children in the ninja arts. This student must be truly gifted to have made it this far, with just clan techniques and training methods. Even the river daimyo had been impressed enough to sponsor the young man's spot. Ko had excellent chakra control, better than the Haruno girl, and was becoming a fairly talented field medic. This Hiruzen, no one knew what he specialized in. His opponent in the prelims was weak, and Hiruzen hadn't had to give much away. The battle started at close range. Ko attacked with chakra scalpels. Hiruzen used metal gauntlets of his wrist and arms to deflect the attacks and cause damage on his own. Then Hiruzen withdrew a short staff from his back, a man after Sarutobi's own heart, and began to wail on Ko. The Kunoichi jumped away and went to medium-distance attacks. She specialized in ranged weapons and explosions. Ko rained down kunai on her opponent, and a few of them had small explosive notes attached. The battleground became a war zone. Dust everywhere. The battle still continuing, although the spectators could only hear clanging and banging. When the dust cleared, it was clear that the two had reached a stalemate. Khan had been pinned by the short staff her opponent wielded, but she had a kunai with an exploding tag stuck in the young man's thigh. Neither could win without dying. It is a draw, the proctor declared. Neither would progress. But perhaps Sarutobi would have someone inquire of the young river ninja if he would like to join the Leaf forces. He was talented and Sarutobi would appreciate more bow users among his ninja. The second rounds were drawn and the pairings revealed. The Nara would go against the Inyazuka. And Naruto would go against the water user from Waterfall. A 30-minute break was announced to permit people to get refreshments but, in actuality, to facilitate additional gambling on these matches. When the tournament resumed, Inyazuka quickly overwhelmed the Nara. The shadow user had basically depleted all his chakra in the first round and was forced into a quick concession. The second battle was a good bit longer. Sarutobi knew that Naruto was playing with Isado as he had never gone up against a true water-oriented ninja. Sure, the boy had a few water techniques, mostly for defense, but he was curious. In any case, it looked like a good battle. Naruto showed that his most recent training with Sarutobi had finally come in useful. It was a strange commentary that Naruto, who loved techniques that caused mass damage, had to be taught how to disarm an opponent who wasn't as strong as one of the Monkey King's subjects, rather than just destroy them. Isado didn't know how lucky he was. The boy had quite a bit of skill. He was able to form a small water dragon, using just the barrel of water he'd been permitted to situate in the far side of the arena. Similar provisions were made when the tournament was held in other countries, if needed. Water users shouldn't be disadvantaged just because the tournament was in the desert, for example. Naruto tested the boy's water techniques and then let himself be caught in a few genjutsu just to experience them, and then, finally, after faking a look of exhaustion, went on the offensive. When he struck this time, he did not draw blood. When he parried a water blast, he used his wind to freeze some of the water. Then he picked them up and threw them back. The water user couldn't dissolve them and manipulate them. One of the small spikes struck Sato in the upper arm. When Naruto went in for the submission move, the boy attacked Naruto with a half-abortive ice technique of his own. Naruto played with it, examined it, and then sent Sato unconscious. Naruto was using this tournament to learn even in a crowd like this. Remarkable. The final match was obvious. The Inyazuka vs Naruto. Still another 30-minute break was called and the betting was furious outside the arena. When the audience calmed down, the proctor started this last match. It was a bit amusing to Sarutobi. This was Naruto and Kiba's first pairing at the examination to become genin as well. The fight, mostly in Taijutsu, showed how both had radically improved since then. The Inyazuka sensei, the former head of the Hunter Nin, had done much to calm the boy and focus him. He thought better and fought better. Both of them were transformed since their student days. The Inyazuka was nearly a match for Naruto in straight Taijutsu. Had Naruto been using his elemental attacks well, the story might be different, but the boy knew better than to use such a thing on a fellow loyal leaf ninja. The match was truly well coordinated until the Inyazuka upped the ante. The boy was surprised when Naruto fought well against the Inyazuka clan technique of the beast clone. The little puppy became a second, rather feral-looking Kiba. Naruto dealt with both of them once this happened, being forced to show more of his true skill level. One couldn't best a 5-foot-tall monkey and then fail to beat two Chunin-level ninja. And when they tried to execute their twisting and twirling technique, they hit a cyclonic whirl of air that tossed them both away from Naruto. That was a second new technique that the Sandaime hadn't seen yet. The boy was keeping secrets, it seemed, even from his sensei. Good, the boy was learning to be a ninja. He asked for help when stumped, but kept some things in reserve to surprise and delight at the opportune moment. The match ended when the puppy ran out of enhanced chakra and basically fell asleep. Kiba broke his discipline and went to the aid of his animal. The Inyazuka would have to be broken of such a tendency soon. The proctor declared Naruto the winner. There was much groaning and much rejoicing as various winners and losers went to claim and pay their bets. The arena began to empty. But the 10 challengers returned to the floor. Sarutobi finished his ballot. He had felt generous this time. He voted to award Chunin rank to Naruto, Kiba, Shikamaru, Shino, the Waterfall Ninja, and the River Ninja. He collected the ballots from the other cages and the daimyos. The ballots were unanimous for a few and split fiercely on the rest. Naruto and the Inyazuka were clear Chunin. Shikamaru barely scraped enough votes which would suit him just fine. Sato claimed enough, but the River Ninja did not. That was a mistake to the Hokage's mind. It seemed like a bit of discrimination against a ninja not from a hidden village. Shino had 6 of 13 votes, so no vest, which was also the case for Komogi. Tamari somehow got 5 votes, even from a single vicious assassination-style attack. More politics, it seemed. The Hyuga got 5. While all the others got 4. Some ballots had called for everyone to be made Chunin and obviously some daimyo had done very well with his betting or had been drinking for a rather long time. The Hokage walked down to the floor of the arena and handed out 4 Chunin vests. As the sad River Ninja walked away, the Hokage gestured him over. "I believe you deserve promotion, young man." "Thank you, sir. If you should ever wish to serve and train in a hidden village, the Leaf would welcome you." "Thank you. But I have to return to my clan. The daimyo has promised the maid in exchange for my service on his guard, but if the offer were still open in a few years." The young man was good. He knew how to negotiate with powerful men. I will send you a warrant. Provided you have grown in strength and have stayed clear of legal entanglements, I will permit you to join the Leaf no matter who is Hokage then. You plan to step down, sir? I have been Hokage for more than 40 years, young man. I will either step down of my own accord or nature will force me into it. I see. Thank you. Hiruzen Kunio walked away without a vest but with a massive smile on his face. Sarutobi would have given even money that the boy would come to the Leaf in a few years after his clan received the daimyo's largesse. Naruto had a large stupid smile on his face. As he bounced up and down. While waiting for the Hokage to shake his hand. I will call up Enma at our next meeting, young ninja, if you do not stop bouncing. This threat worked, but nothing could take the smile from his face. Keeping secrets, huh? No one else realized what your shield was, but I see the wrath of God in your future, boy. They were speaking in public, so the Hokage was circumspect with the boy. The whirlpool shield to fling away opponents or thrown weapons, Naruto added. That was also new. Naruto beamed and nodded. Excellent work, young shinobi. Excellent. As the Hokage moved on to speak with the other finalists, critiquing and praising in equal measure, Naruto began his self-satisfied bouncing again. The boy was a genius, but he had entirely too much energy. Hinata felt like her baby was soon to come into this world. And then they would take it. She had racked her mind trying to determine what to do. These were ninja while she was from a ninja family, but hadn't been trained since she was 5 many years ago. She had been trying to work herself back into the form she remembered. Pulling up chakra to her fingers and attacking the points her father, his face still obscure in her memory, and mother showed her. 2 days later, when the guardians came to take her to a medical room, she gently tapped one guardian with a finger. When he started gagging, she tapped the other guardian on the spine at the top of his neck. One would die of a heart attack soon, and the other had a brain no longer able to communicate to her body. She stripped the shorter guardian and got into her clothing. Then her heart raged in her chest as she made her way to the door. A third guardian appeared, confused. Hinata's hand went to his chest, but she found herself bound in the man's powerful grasp. Her other hand reached over and tapped the man's forehead. He dropped to the ground. She left, 8 months pregnant, on a dark moonless night. The only thing possibly worse would have been falling rain. She did not have food or water or a map. She had not been outside in 7 years. Her captors would not learn of her flight until a shift change happened in this facility. She would be out of their grasp by then. But the recorded images of what she had done, how she had killed those, would be added to the small archive of footage of how the nearly extinct Hyuga fought and killed. Kumo Ninja had been keeping this archive for 20 years now. Hinata, barely trained, her captors cursed her when they realized she was a genius. She had used old memories to do this, to kill 3 older trained ninja. 3 light taps and they were dead. The mother had learned to do this for her unborn second child. She had power. Everyone had underestimated her, and now she was gone, likely dead. The Hokage, when told of this, did not fly into a rage. After all, his new nephew was a male of the Hyuga line, but without any memories of the Hyuga massacre or any other Hyuga. In 10 or 12 years when he became sexually mature, this boy would be able to father many more children than a single woman could. The boy would mate and mate and mate. The Hokage would train the boy to prize beautiful women and to love the feeling of being on top of them. And the Hyuga would be reborn here and not like the tattered remnants still in Hidden Leaf. Powerful. Adding to the might of the Hokage. Uchiha Itachi made his way to Rice Country. The rumors had been right about this. Someone had definitely constructed underground bunkers here. Itachi decided to see what would happen if he damaged one. If he could get just a bit of information, then he would have his confirmation, and then he could plan for the future. He affixed explosive notes to the exposed entrance. Moments later he was well away when the explosion opened the secure entrance. Itachi had not interest in entering. He was waiting for someone, a security ninja, perhaps, to exit. He was not disappointed. A minute later, a coughing gray-haired young man wearing glasses exited through the gaping chasm that once was a staircase. Itachi gave the boy, or ninja, a chance to catch his bearings. "Can you tell me if Orochimaru is around?" Itachi asked. The gray-haired boy blinked behind his glasses. "Is this a joke?" "No. Please tell me where I can find the Snake Sannin. He's dead." The gray-haired ninja stalked forward. Itachi was prepared. "I see. So you served him." "I was his best spy." Itachi sent a blast of black fire at the boy which just nicked the ninja. His arm looked like seared beef until it began to heal before Itachi's Sharingan eyes. A useful skill. Why? I no longer get the chance to kill Orochimaru, but I might as well kill his best spy. You have Sharingan eyes. I had not meant to use them. I guess my rage got the better of me. Prepare yourself. The slight, bespectacled ninja was better than he looked. He actually managed to graze Itachi with a chakra scalpel. Itachi decided to end this fight in the most interesting way possible. Tsukiyomi. It took the silver-haired ninja a second to realize that he was in a different place. What? This Kabuto, Itachi said, plucking the ninja's name from the ninja's own mind, is a world I control. I have been experimenting with this technique and have recently made a breakthrough. We will be viewing your past together and subjecting you to the pain you caused other people. Let's begin. The mental Kabuto screamed as each one of his secrets, his spying, his training, his stealing of orphans, everything was stripped from his mind and put in plain view. Kabuto felt the pain of being dissected with chakra scalpels while still alive, of horrific experiments being performed on him. He began to beg for death before the first hour was over. By the time 72 were complete, he had no active mind left. The portions keeping his body alive were mostly unaffected, but his memory, speech, and cognition centers were destroyed by the pain. Itachi re-emerged from Kabuto's mind a few moments after using the jutsu. He now knew exactly what he needed to do next. Orochimaru, after all, still had one living experiment who possessed Sharingan eyes. And several preserved sets of Sharingan eyes. All that needed to be dealt with, the entire legacy needed to be destroyed. Good job, Naruto, but I lost again. My 7-foot-tall friend here, he is the last step before you begin to fight Enma. And the gulf between your skill and his has grown smaller in the last 2 months. I suspect you will be able to bring him to a draw in another 2 or 3 months. I know. Have your skills improved because of this sparring? Of course. I am getting much better. Exactly. So stop being so down in the dumps. Right, sensei. Thank you, honorable monkey, for the training. A pleasure, the tall, unnamed monkey said before he bowed to Sarutobi and then vanished. So why doesn't he have a name? Naruto, he has a name, but because of his position as heir to the monkey throne, he may not share it with anyone who does not sign the contract. I know his name, as I do Enma's true name. Naruto seemed a bit mystified, but dropped it. He didn't yet realize the strange politics involved in working with a summoning partner. If Jiraiya decided to have him contract with the Toads, well, they were stranger than most. Now I know that I told you I would be working on your fire techniques, something has come up. Are you bailing on me, sensei? No, not at all. It seems I must fill in more of your story, your personal story, and introduce you to your godfather. Really? Who is it? It's me, Jiraiya, the legendary ninja. Sarutobi bopped his old student on the head before he could make his young student an unruly delinquent. One of the Sannin. I know of you. You taught the 4th. Yes, that's right, brat. I taught your father. By the widening of the boy's eyes and the anger on Sarutobi's face, it became apparent Naruto did not know the details of his parentage yet. That could have been done more diplomatically, my idiot student. You were supposed to have told him. My father was the 4th. Why did no one tell me? Sarutobi shot a glare at Jiraiya before answering. It was my decision, Naruto. I wanted to give you as much information at a time as you could reasonably handle. That's why you found out about your Tenin 3 years ago. And now about your famous father. I always wondered what happened growing up. Now, I know. My mother. Minato's girlfriend, a lovely, saucy wench from Whirlpool. This time Naruto took Sarutobi's bow and bopped Jiraiya on the head. That's my mother. She's not a saucy wench, you pervert. This is important, Naruto, as I will do the formal unsealing of your father's last testament now that you have become a Chunin. I believe your hidden talents will keep you safe from most potential attacks. Hidden Stone still harbors hatred of this village because of your father's battle prowess. I know. I listened in history class. The friendly, hyperactive Naruto had presented himself again. Sarutobi expected another conversation on Naruto's displeasure of secrets being kept from him, but not for a few days or a week. Something like this would take Naruto some time to ponder. Alright, brat, Jiraiya said. I will be your new teacher. You're dumping me? Naruto asked the Hokage. That's quite a step down from a Hokage to a white-haired pervert. Hey. Brat. I trained a Hokage, which is more than Sarutobi-sensei ever did. This was getting of control. Who knew Naruto could press all of Jiraiya's buttons like that? It was quite amusing, however. Excuse me, old student. I trained 3 people strong enough to be Kages, but one was too evil, one too busy drawing her memories, and one too lazy and distracted to do the job. Naruto began to laugh now. It was contagious. Everyone was shouting. It was the best thing he'd seen in a long time. Who knew the Hokage could be so funny? Fine. Naruto, let's get started. Have you ever accessed your Tenen's chakra? No, huh? Well, we'll have to work on that. No, the Hokage said. No, Jiraiya, you will train him to be a ninja, not a Jinchuriki. What are you saying, you old fool? He's got this tremendous well of power. He'll be the most powerful ninja ever. Listen to me, my old student. Do you know what Naruto can do now? Well, no. I caught his matches at the Chunin exams, but that wouldn't have done a thing against Orochimaru. You don't understand. Naruto may or may not need the power of the Kyuubi in the future, but until he plateaus developing his standard ninja skills, I would not tempt fate. As of now, Naruto's secret is not widely spread. That story we put out all those years ago about the demon vessel dying as a result of the sealing, it worked. Demon watchers have been waiting for the Kyuubi to reform, but no one knows how long that will take or where. The deception has worked. But if you begin having Naruto fling and flex Yaokai around, that story will not hold. Jiraiya sighed. I get it. I see. HNN. He turned to the kid. So, what can a brat like you do that impresses Sarutobi-sensei so much? The Hokage laughed. You may show him, Naruto, but no permanent injuries. Got it? Hey, wait. What do you mean no? The earth to all sides of Jiraiya exploded upward and then covered the Sannin in tons of dirt and muck. He strengthened his body at the last second, otherwise he might have been crushed under that amount of weight. Holy toads on high. How did you do that? Naruto looked a bit smug now. Sarutobi had been working with him for a long time now. He wasn't just sleeping his way through lessons. You did something to create a deep trench around me. That's pretty good for slowing down an enemy. Not bad. Not bad at all. So what kind of earth-style technique is that? Naruto smiled even wider. It isn't, Jiraiya. It was Naruto's direct manipulation of elemental air directed down into the earth. The dirt had no place to go, but up and onto you. You can't be serious. I didn't think such a thing was possible. Who's the bad teacher now, Jiraiya? You better apologize or I won't let you take Naruto out of the village to train. I apologize. Please. Please believe me. What do you say, Naruto? Do you wish to train with that old fool? Naruto looked between the two men. Sarutobi had an hour a week to spare. This Jiraiya might have more time to help Naruto with the delicate intricate wind manipulations he was working on. If he trained the fourth well, that's good enough for me. For now. Fine. Yahoo. Silly Jiraiya. Then a small voice interrupted things. Hey, old man, who's making all this racket? The Hokage turned around and saw that his grandson was standing at the door from the main house to the training ground. The young boy should have been doing his ninja lessons at this time. Where's Ibisu? The former internal affairs head had taken to teaching and tutoring better than anyone, including himself, had foreseen. He liked being a special jounin. Oh, him. I tied him to a chair. It's my turn to try to defeat you, old man. Not this. Konohamaru had recently taken to challenging the Hokage to ridiculous duels. He had good wily impulses, but his execution was always so botched. He could tie Ibisu to a chair, but he couldn't run downstairs without tripping. Things like that. But Naruto, of all people. His snickering turned to laughter, and that annoyed Konohamaru. The boy began to fixate on Naruto again. Konohamaru had tried to get Naruto to teach him to throw kunai or a half dozen other things. Now his focus was back on Namikaze Naruto. Sarutobi wished his young student luck. Konohamaru was nothing if not persistent. Naruto would discover that for himself. The Jounin and 3 Chunin patrolling the northern border came across a pale girl, nearly dead. She had a baby in her arms. Who was she? How had she been surviving? One of the Chunin checked on the baby dead. Likely stillborn. But the girl 11, 12 years old. She was barely alive. It took 3 days for her to recover enough for her to open her eyes. Hyuga eyes. That was enough to get her sent back to Konoha, post-haste. They could figure out what had happened and who this girl was. Uzumaki Naruto wasn't a terribly prideful creature, but he was happy to walk around the village in his new Chunin vest. And there was the girl he was looking for. Hey Sakura, would you like to go on a date with me? Sakura turned around. Oh, it's Naruto. No, I was waiting for Mamoru to come out of the grocery store. I was going to ask him for a date. Mamoru? The Uchiha. He's been so grumpy he was forced out of the Chunin exam because of his wounds. Grumpy makes you happy. Sakura closed the distance between them and bonked Naruto on the head. He had the good sense to look pained, even if he had had an air pocket up there to absorb the blow. Even getting bonked on the head was good for chakra control. No, I will never go on a date with you. Alright. You don't have to be mean about it. If you'd rather date a sourpuss, that's your choice. He started walking and then saw a girl come out of the grocery store. Naruto waved at her. She took a second and then recognized Naruto, the boy who won the tournament. Hi. Hey, you're Tenten, right? Yes. Would you like to go on a date with me? Before she could answer, Sakura was back in Naruto's face. You idiot. You can't ask me out then go and ask her. Why not? You said no and hit me. Tenten's got a mind of her own. It's just rude, Sakura shouted. No, rude is hitting someone on the head. Go back to trying to get Mamoru to look at you. Then Naruto turned to look back at Tenten. So, what do you say? Farewell. She was kinda right. It's not so cool to ask out another girl next to the one who just turned you down. Naruto just smiled and bounced on his toes. Not accepting Tenten's explanation. I just heard Sakura refuse. You might have wanted to wait a while and hoped I forgot. Naruto just smiled wider. Is that a no? Tenten looked so confused. No. I guess I will. But you're paying. I like fish. What do you like? Anything? in large portions. The woman after my own heart. Thus, Naruto got his first date. And the Sandaime Hokage, who'd been spying from his office, burst out laughing. The Hokage should have been tense or angry or pensive given the meeting that was about to happen. Instead he felt like giggling. He just couldn't get the previous morning out of his head. What had happened when Uzumaki Naruto became Namikaze Naruto? At least the boy had his first date before all this fame business was thrown at him. Sarutobi had expected quite a reaction to the news of a surviving Namikaze, but this was extreme. Naruto was already begging to take out-of-town missions with Team Yamanaka or to leave on a training mission with Jiraiya. The girls who knew the girls could become rabid over such a sliver of news. One pink-haired girl, Haruno, had begun screaming, "Naruto, I'll go on a date with you." Someone else threw panties at the young blonde ninja. Naruto had the dignity to blush and the good sense not to pick them up. Naruto had holed up in his apartment after that and refused to answer the door. Sarutobi giggled just a bit and imagined that Jiraiya would have a bawdy parody of the whole thing in his next book. The Toad Sannin had been scribbling notes like a madman, after all. When the door opened and the second person walked into this conference room, Sarutobi returned to his rather dour standard look for diplomatic gatherings. He didn't know the man who walked into the room, nor did he recognize the man's guards who took up position outside the open door. But Sarutobi had seen those robes on other people in his rather long lifetime. They were the Lightning Daimyo's most formal ceremonial robes. Apparently begging for mercy at a peace conference merited his most awe-inspiring robes. The man was wearing cloth and jewels that were equal in value to a year's earnings for an entire civilian village. Sarutobi hated the gesture. He had been prepared to offer a sliver of mercy to this daimyo if he was at all convincing in shifting the blame for Kumo's actions entirely onto the Hokage. But now this flaunting of wealth. It just irritated the Sandaime Hokage. The smug bastard had enough pearls embroidered to his arms to have kept divers busy for 20 years. Sarutobi vowed to humble this man. Turning over that robe would be just one of the requirements for a formal peace. Sarutobi would make a public display of having craftsmen tear it apart to recover the gold threads, the inevitable chunks of chakra-absorbing metals sewn into special pockets as a weak kind of anti-ninja armor, and the gems and stones making the thing look more like a chandelier than a piece of clothing. Good day to you, Hokage. Welcome daimyo. I hear whispers of some unusual happenings in your village. A lost lamb has reclaimed his patrimony. My word, the spies are getting better and faster. I hadn't thought it wise to tip your hand in such a way. The daimyo tried to shrug, but the added bulk of his padded robes made it hard to tell. You know I have spies. Why shouldn't I admit such a thing? This man was an idiot, Sarutobi realized. Such an admission tantamount to saying I now have something you treasure, and I can hurt it if I wish, ensured that Sarutobi would absolutely destroy Lightning and Hidden Cloud's abilities to dabble in foreign intrigues for a long time to come. The Hokage was relieved of the necessity of responding when the conference room door opened again. The Wind Daimyo entered. He looked abject and angry at the same time. Hokage. Daimyo. The tall, thin, heavily tanned man wore a simple robe. He sat down in his chair and said nothing. His mind was obviously elsewhere. Sarutobi hated to do it, but wind would have to be broken. This man was wise enough that he probably knew it, too. While he likely had no foreknowledge of what Hidden Sand was going to do, his little budgetary games with his ninja force had brought this to pass. Hidden Sand would pay, and the Wind Lord would pay, too. Within the next few minutes, the room filled. The youngest person in the room was a terrified-looking teenager, the Rice Daimyo. He was the fourth person to hold the position in the last 7 years. Orochimaru had promised to bring wealth and prominence to Rice country, and he had, for a time. But he had also handled his disagreements with various Rice daimyos by killing them. The young man was probably safer sitting in this room than even having a friendly meal with the former head of Hidden Sound. The oldest person here was an acting Kazekage. He was one of the few Hidden Sand Council members who hadn't been sent on the invasion, since he was far too old to be an active ninja. The Hokage, a man who was about the age Minato would have been if not for the Kyuubi, just sat and smiled an odd little smile like he had a secret. This man's behavior wasn't proof by any means, but it led Sarutobi to believe he had something to do with a young Hyuga girl who had recently been brought back to the Hidden Leaf village. The Fire Lord had wanted to attend, but Sarutobi asked him not to bother. He had a plan in mind for handling all this, and a civilian in the room might make it a challenge. All of this was carefully scripted. The meeting's location was scrupulously neutral. A resort community in grass country. The rules were simple. Each figure could bring 5 bodyguards, only one of whom could sit outside the meeting room. The only people allowed inside this room were Kages and daimyos. The room fell into silence. As the victor in the recent attempted invasion, Sarutobi began the meeting. Thank you for coming. I hope we will all be able to come to an agreement this day. Many things have led to this situation, so I realize it won't be easy to deal with so many issues. There is only issue, the Hokage interrupted. What will it cost me for the return of my ninja assuming they are still alive? Of the captured ninja, only the hidden leaf missing ninja Orochimaru has been executed. All the ninja who belong to foreign forces have been healed up and well treated and even permitted to participate in the Chunin exams. I understand, the acting Kazuki said. Very crafty of you, keeping all of this confined to rumor and hearsay. It gives you a lot of leverage in this, you crafty old monkey. The Hokage smiled. You have no idea how much leverage I actually have in this. No idea at all, but like I said, there are many issues to deal with. Why don't we go around the room and see where we are on terms? As the Raikage suggests, why don't we begin with the price to be paid for the safe return of hostages? The brusque hidden cloud ninja pursed his lips. I will offer 20,000 ryo for each hostage, provided they are still in fighting condition. Sarutobi said nothing. The lightning daimyo he of the bejeweled robe did not contradict his counterpart. The acting Kazuki was next. My situation is more complicated. I would actually prefer not to have one of the hostages returned. Ara? Sarutobi asked. The old Suna ninja nodded, a bit hesitant. Fine. What is your offer? With our impoverished state, we can afford 8,000 ryo per ninja. Sarutobi's eyes turned to the rice daimyo. Both he and the young man knew why there was no acting leader of Hidden Sound. My country has been devastated by a man who promised to make us wealthy and powerful. My predecessors drained our treasuries at his demand. To be honest, I would prefer for the Hidden Sound to have never existed, and I will pay Hidden Leaf 200,000 ryo to handle the ninja from Sound they captured. I do not want them. That surprised everyone in the room save for Sarutobi. A daimyo giving up on military power. It was unprecedented. This person was the youngest in the room, but he had the best sense of reality of anyone here. He realized and admitted that his country was going to be vastly changed as a result of this. Other comments? What would you accept, old monkey? That was the acting Kazuki. I remind you to observe the formalities, acting Kazuki. I will accept none of these proposals as presented. But it is interesting to hear what. No. Enough. I am here because my daimyo forced me, the Raikage said. I only care to get my ninja back. 20,000 ryo per person is more than double what Hidden Sand is offering. You just can't squeeze blood from a rock. Hidden Leaf is the wealthy village, not us. Sarutobi just nodded. Oh, I think the monetary portion of your offer is not far off the mark once we factor in the contribution that will be required from your daimyo. What? The gaudy man said. For not supervising his military force more carefully. But none of you has touched on the key issue. You offer ryo, which is a start, but you offer no promises of security to me or the Fire Country. I cannot just return your ninja and leave you in a position to do this again in a few years. No. What do you mean by security, Hokage? The Wind Daimyo inquired. Obviously I would require that the total compensation from all three forces fully repay the cost of our precautions, and I would require more than just a piece of paper saying you won't do this again. For example, I will require hostages of appropriate rank. No one has said anything about hostages, the lightning daimyo said, suddenly a bit nervous. He had thought confidence would protect him from paying any price. Fool. Sarutobi leaned forward. I said hostages. I plan to say technique libraries. I will say summoning contracts. I have a lot to say. This is outrageous. The Raikage bellowed, standing up. He was at the door before anyone could blink. But he could not open it. What sort of trick is this? Insurance, Sarutobi said. No one will leave this room until I permit it. How? The rice daimyo asked. I had 30 minutes here by myself. I am not a sealing master by any means, but I know more than anyone in this room. No one will leave without my consent. It just served as a dare to prove Sarutobi wrong. It took 20 minutes and more than a few threats directed at the Hokage before people accepted the truth of what he'd said. Shall we resume? The Raikage sat like a petulant child. Keep them, then. I can rebuild my ninja forces. If your cost will destroy the uniqueness of my hidden village, I will let them rot in your jails and force you the expense of keeping them. I see. And you, acting Kazuki. I must have at least the members of our most prominent clans ransomed. Perhaps we can negotiate. Sarutobi wondered how deluded these people really were. Only the rice daimyo still seemed to understand that his independent status as a ruler was over. Let me explain one detail that you seem to have overlooked. I have had your jounin, your black ops specialists, the best of your villages in my custody for 2 months now. I said they were all in good health, but that does not mean they haven't been interrogated. I have your most recent secrets in my possession as we speak. Do I need to spread a few dirty items around to prove this claim? No one looked at all interested in having this happen. Now let's be serious. I am not signing any treaty or unlocking this room until you are all unable, legally and otherwise, to make war on my hidden village. Some of you were duped by Orochimaru, but that does not leave you blameless. Some of you were squeezed by unfortunate politics with your daimyo, and that does not excuse you. Some of you just love to make war, and that makes me even less forgiving, even if your people just set a blockade to support the invasion. That set things off again. Sarutobi held more cards than he'd revealed so far. He had 5 opponents in front of him. One was ready to sign almost anything Sarutobi presented to him, but the other 4 needed to be humbled. Eventually the Wind Daimyo silenced the others. You have some strong opinions. What will it take? What do you want? As price for returning the ninja who I should rightfully try and execute. As payment for an attempt at slaughtering my people. I demand that each of your richest ninja clans pay 80% of their wealth, plus a hostage. I demand that each noble family or member of the daimyo's court pay 50% of their wealth, plus 2 hostages. I demand an additional payment of 20,000 ryo per ninja from the hidden village each of my prisoners works for. I demand that Rice Country sign an annexation and that Fire Country have the right of vetoing any Reikage or Kazekage or daimyo candidate for the next 50 years. I demand all the summoning contracts held by your ninja clans, all the techniques that are not in common circulation. I intend to ruin your ability to make war against us, but to leave you all able to continue to take missions for clients. If I wanted to destroy you utterly, I could. Reikage, calmer now than he had been for quite some time, said, I have heard enough. I will do nothing of what you demand. Indeed, I shall lower my bid to 2,000 ryo per prisoner. I think you overplay your hand, elderly ninja, and I will not weaken my village for a fool like you. The acting Kazekage bit his lips, then began to talk. I must concur. You are too kind-hearted to follow through on these threats. To demand such things from us, you must be prepared to destroy our villages in retribution. Belief is powerful in body, but weak in mind. The Rice Daimyo, speaking for Hidden Sound, said, I will agree to the annexation. As weak as we are at this time, I expect an invasion within the year from any one of our neighbors. The monetary conditions are severe as our treasuries are almost non-existent. Might we enter into negotiations on that point? Sarutobi nodded. Everyone else in the room looked murderous. They were jockeying for position, trying to bargain down the Hokage, and this teenager had just destroyed the illusion of false strength they were trying to create. You're wise, Daimyo. As you have seen with your own eyes, my ninja have occupied the former bases of the Hidden Sound. After those facilities are emptied and destroyed, we will use our ninja to protect your nation until the annexation is complete. I think we can come to terms, but the rest of you, my terms will grow harsher. As Cloud and Sand reduce their bids, I increase my demands. The Lightning Daimyo will not walk out of this room with that robe on. It is garish and foolish to bring such a thing to a meeting of supplication. That useless wealth will be broken down and put to use. I've never, the fat man said. The Reikage looked at the Hokage with questioning eyes. He didn't know what the old ninja was up to, but he didn't care for it. Shut up, Karuto, the Reikage said to his daimyo. You were stupid about that ceremonial robe. We were here to beg and prove our poverty, but you had to dress up. You have so little sense, someone must remind you not to drown when you bathe. But I wonder what the Hokage has yet to tell us. He has our ninja prisoners, he has some of our secrets, what else do you have? What makes you so confident this day? The Hokage nodded a few times. Very perceptive, Reikage. Very good. You seem to finally be paying attention. Well, the main point is that 6 hours ago Hidden Cloud and Hidden Sand were infiltrated by special teams. As we speak, your summoning contracts, your hidden stashes of cash, your armories, and your reserve technique libraries they belong to the Leaf. Within 2 hours, your banks will be stormed and robbed by other teams. All of your wealth will flow away. In the capital cities of these 3 countries, my teams have done at least that much. You will sign the treaties if you wish to see even a sliver of this wealth return. If I do not walk out of this room with signed treaties by 8 o'clock this evening, my armies will invade all 3 countries. If I am still here by 8 tomorrow morning, then we execute all the prisoners we have. And beyond that there is one final provision. I do not think any of you care for a full-time military occupation, as that will lead to a destruction of all that you hold dear. The room went up in shock and screaming for quite a long time. This conference was a trick. You lured us here to lull us into calm, you have betrayed us. These were the kind of negotiations that Sarutobi liked. Yes, Sarutobi had the upper hand because he had betrayed these men. He had attacked them when their strongest ninja were away, just as they had proposed to do to his village, while it was in the middle of hosting an important international event. Did they think Sarutobi a fool? Did they think him old and doddering? They should realize soon that they were wrong. Even if one of the 2 other ninja managed to kill him, then their countries, their soldiers, and everything they valued would fall before any of these people could manage to break down the ceiling arrays inside this room. And if Sarutobi did not emerge with them by a set time, then his ninja had orders to kill everyone here. He had left it to the rather odd Jounin named Mitogai to do this. The man was to rig up a few hundred exploding notes in the rooms bordering on this one to cover the 4 walls, ceiling, and floor. The ninja was a bit strange in the head, but he had never failed to execute an order. It was a doomsday type scenario, but Sarutobi was done playing games. He played to win. These people would capitulate or their countries and villages would fall, and Sarutobi wouldn't have to worry about picking another successor. A small, desolate girl looked up when someone came into her hospital room. She'd had a lot of people come to speak with her. The eyes. This person was like her. Hyuga. The young woman looked at Hinata for a few moments before smiling. I am called Miki. Hinata. I knew your father and your mother. Hinata just nodded. How are you alive? The bad people told me I was the last one alive. A shake of the head answered the question. I was one of 11 Hyuga who remained in this village, the Hidden Leaf, when everyone else left. My father he never said anything. He did not wish for us to remain and tried to convince us to leave. He likely considered it yet another failure for the clan. Few people willingly own up to their failings. The room fell silent. I would like for you to come and stay with me and my husband after you're healed. Why? Because you should stay with family. The impassive Hinata became even colder. I killed 3 people. Did they tell you that? I have had 2 babies, one is dead and I don't know where the other one is. I haven't talked to anyone but a captor in 7 years. Do you really want me to stay? The girl was certainly blunt, Mickey's surprised look said. Yes. Can I meet your husband? Before I decide. Of course. He'll be back from our store after 6. Store? Grocery store. Vegetables, rice, meat, and the like. You and he aren't ninja, then? No. That was the only reason your father didn't force me and the others to leave with them. Civilians through and through. But the children who stayed behind, all 3 of them, have become ninja. I want to be a ninja, Hinata said. That surprised Mickey. Why? I will never be weak again. Never. By the shock on Mickey's face, this was the first bit of information that had her rethinking her offer to Hinata. But her face eased. Well, I will help you as much as I can, even if it's just making sure you get plenty to eat. Thank you, Hinata said. The room fell back into silence. Mickey left, after waving, left without saying another word. Hinata responded, after the door closed, by smiling. Ashigaki Kisame and Tobi stood in the forest outside the Hidden Leaf. Tobi thinks the wall is very tall. Why did leader make me bring you along? Tobi is strongest ninja in Akatsuki. Not getting hit by Samehada isn't the same thing as strength. Dodging is just one skill, you damned muppet. Tobi thinks the Kisame is not a happy ninja. Tobi thinks the Kisame needs to eat some seaweed. Kisame went to punch the idiot, but his fist went right through Tobi. Figures. I am going to kill you. Just as soon as we deal with the intelligence. A too powerful genin in the last place the Kyuubi was known to be the missing child of the man who sealed away the Kyuubi. The stars have lined up. Tobi likes stars. Tobi counts them at night but always stops at 10. Tobi wished he had more fingers. Kisame said nothing. He just watched and waited. Eventually he got a clue as to the location of their target. Female voices carried on the wind told him what he needed to go. It's true, he was at training ground 21. My sister just ran back and told me. Oh. I want to see the last Namikas. Kisame looked down the orange-masked muppet. Tobi knows. Tobi has been inside every hidden village. Let's go. Tobi began to skip. Kisame had to make an effort not to kill his partner. By the time they penetrated the village and found the correct training ground, Kisame had imagined and discarded 19 different ways to kill Tobi. None of the methods were harsh or painful enough. All those thoughts disappeared when he set eyes on a shock of blonde hair attached to a fairly small young man. Said young man was practicing taijutsu against a training log. But each time he struck the log, a gouge appeared. On one strike, a deep slice penetrated the log and a small portion fell off. The ninja wasn't fast enough to keep up with either Tobi who, despite being an idiot, did seem to have some skill or Kisame. But a young ninja able to channel chakra like that while in a hand-to-hand mode. Someone had given this kid some kind of training. These attacks would fail against Samehada, of course. But it was exciting. The gaki might actually have some merit. Tobi thinks the boy knows we're here. Tobi tried to whisper, but the words came out rather loud. The young blonde ninja hadn't turned around, but his hand seemed to be moving in some type of ninjutsu. Kisame only had a moment to detect something chakra flaring up near him. Move, he hissed to Tobi. Kisame dove. Tobi hopped up and down a bit and then a deep crater formed where Kisame had stood and Tobi seemed to be almost floating over the gaping hole. Tobi likes that. Tobi thinks explosions are the best. Master Kisame must find out how the boy makes his explosions. They feel different from what Master Tadara does. The little muppet kept babbling happily, but Kisame had to agree about how different that explosion was. Yes. Yes. Tobi must know. I won't be telling you anything, the blonde ninja said. He was closer than Kisame would have liked. Fine by me, Kisame said. You just need to come with us. If you're who we think you are, we definitely have a use for you. Do you expect me to politely walk away with Nukinen, one of whom looks like a jumping diseased grapefruit on tiny legs, and the other looks like he sat in a freezer overnight sharpening his teeth? Oh, Tobi thinks he's funny. Funny. Does he always shout that much? the blonde-haired ninja said. Unfortunately, Kisame admitted. So it seems I need to get rough with you. Please meet Samehada, my most very special sword. I know that name. Ah, one of the swords used by the 7 swordsmen in Mist before it was disbanded. Very good. Kisame swung and saw the boy get into taijutsu form without even a kunai in his hand. It looked like he was going to use that chakra enhancement he'd been practicing earlier on that mangled training log. The boy's fist shot out for a punch, but it wavered when it got close to Samehada. A moment later, the boy disappeared into smoke. Wow, Toby really likes this boy now. Makes explosions and dissolves into smoke. How can Toby be as cool as him? Kisame was on his guard. Was it an odd type of Kawarimi? No, it couldn't be, but it was proof of a corporeal clone, like a shadow clone. Well, that's another piece of evidence. The boy is a chakra monster. There's no way a new Chunin should be able to perform that jutsu, let alone have it performing jutsu like whatever that explosion was. We need to leave now. The memories of what happened here have already been sent. Toby sad. Kisame promised a great fight. Toby wants to see it. If you don't start moving, I'll figure out just how to make Samehada eat your chakra. Toby's going. Don't hurt Toby. Well, the taller guy, he was blue. Carried a big sword. The real Naruto had been in his weekly lesson with Sarutobi when his eyes went wide, which caused his first spar against Enma to end badly for him. Blue. And the shorter guy wore an orange swirling mask. The Hokage seemed to wilt a bit. Inside our walls and no one detected it until they found you. Do you always send decoys out now? Before I have to leave my apartment? You better believe it. I send out a shadow clone to train or buy food or something. Then I leave, under hinge. It's kinda funny when I get the shadow clone's memories, especially if it was dispelled accidentally by an aggressive fangirl, but if I had to deal with it, I think the finger of God would get a workout. Sarutobi was glad that his student and Jiraiya's student now as well was as paranoid as he was. It had just saved the boy from what could have been a horrible confrontation. The blue man sounds like a ninja called Hoshigaki Kisame. He's a swordsman of some renown, but his special talents lay in water-style attacks. He is known for having inexplicably large chakra reserves. The orange mascot brings no one to mind. You say he survived a direct strike from the fist of God. He was just floating there and started shouting about how much he loved explosions. The Hokage made up his mind then. I will not risk Anbu on this. Kisame once killed a daimyo and all his seasoned bodyguards. The man is very strong, although I do not know why his skin is blue like that. All of a sudden, Jiraiya, who was supposedly out of the village, popped in through a window. What the hell did you do to the Raikage, sensei? The rumors I heard. After he was in and speaking, he noticed his newest student nursing a large bruise on his forehead. And what's up with the Gaki? You abusing the Chunin now? Batting them around with your bow work? Shut it, Naruto said. The Akatsuki were just here and tried to kidnap my shadow clone. Sarutobi let the room get quiet before he turned to look at his white-haired former student. The treaty talks went well for the Hidden Leaf. As for the Raikage, if he could have killed me that day, he would have. Let's just say that their attempted stunt cost all of them, even the innocent lords who knew nothing of what their military counterparts were doing, a lot more than they expected and far more than they could afford. We'll begin returning Sand and Cloud Ninja in a week, just as soon as the names of all the permanent hostages are worked out, and begin the trials for the Sound Ninja the week after that. Why not just kill them? Jiraiya asked. Political cover. Each one will face a tribunal. A ninja, a civilian judge from the daimyo's court, and a monk from one of the temples. Jiraiya nodded. Politics usually bored him, so the Hokage wasn't surprised. So the Akatsuki, Jiraiya said. They finally sniffed out Naruto. I told you this, revealing the last Namika's business would have consequences. I didn't realize they'd be this bad, the Hokage said. I don't know which is worse. The shark-looking guy or the damned girls squealing whenever they see my clone in the street. I can see why Mamura was such a stuck-up bastard. The frequencies their voices hit, it's like someone stabbing me with senbon. Jiraiya rolled his eyes. Enough, Naruto. The question is, how do we handle this? I can't go and take back the announcement, the Hokage said. I'm not blaming you, sensei, Naruto said. I agreed when you asked me if you should make my status public. I guess I'll get to test my skills a lot earlier than I had expected. But I also need to get stronger. I have no good way of dealing with a swordsman, and that particular sword did something to disrupt the shadow clone before it even struck. Fine. It's time for Naruto to go on a training trip. Absolutely not, Jiraiya, the Hokage said. Like I took Minato on about a year after he made Chunin. It's where he made his greatest strides as a ninja. He was so intrigued with the summoning technique that he began research that led to his most famous technique. He already played around with seals. He spent 3 years, off and on, playing with chakra extrusion which culminated in the development of the Rasengan, then he began to delve into sealing at a high level, for which I still somewhat blame myself as it permitted him to create a powerful demon sealing ritual when the time came, and let's not forget that he badmouthed my earliest raunchy novel so much that I wrote a serious piece of fiction, the protagonist of which eventually lent our Naruto here his name. That sounds awesome, Naruto shouted. The Hokage shot withering looks at both of his students. I forbid it. Well, Jiraiya continued on, not minding his sensei, I think Naruto's further along developing his style, but he has a long ways to go. Wind techniques, if developed correctly, could make him the equal of any Kage, but I think we haven't thought about this enough. There's more to dig in and discover. You have a few original power techniques, how about using wind for subtlety or evasion or to move very quickly, or I guess the possibilities are endless. If you know what you're doing, and that wrath shield thingy sounds like you do, then wind trumps everything else. Fire can't overwhelm your wind if it can't touch you to hurt you. Jiraiya, listen to me. Naruto is a powerful young ninja, but he is not strong enough in this dangerous time to go traipsing about the world while you go and visit every brothel you stumble across. I don't have to pay, old man. I'm the legendary Jiraiya. Sarutobi's face tightened into a scowl. I will revoke the apprenticeship, Toad Sannin. I will continue to instruct Naruto myself. Why? Naruto asked. Wouldn't I be safer where no one expects me to be? Sarutobi frowned. It was a good question, but Sarutobi's knee-jerk response was to shout no again. Why was he resisting this so much? He asks a fair question. What is you so agitated about this? I have calmed down a bit. I was just trying to figure that out myself. I am not, normally, quite so irrational. You sound like a parent breaking down when he has to send his first child to the academy, Naruto said. The Hokage had no reaction at that point. But his mind began to spin. Was it so simple? Just a knee-jerk reaction to permitting Naruto to leave, to exit the village walls for an indeterminate amount of time. It is possible, Naruto. But I can't help but feel that sending you out of the village is a mistake. I would propose an alternative. I will step down as Hokage. Oh no, not this again, Jiraiya said. Stop looking at me to step behind that desk. And I will become your full-time instructor, Naruto. I have trained 3 powerful ninja already, with you as the 4th. You already outstrip me as a wind practitioner, but I am a master of technique envisioning and creation. I can continue to help you grow and to become well-rounded. Naruto nodded and scrunched up his face, trying to think this through. I think this is a mistake, sensei, Jiraiya said. Well-rounded is all well and fine, but the strongest ninja leaving you and Orochimaru's side, as both of you believed in different versions of well-roundedness, are always lopsided. Naruto has to get massively powerful as quickly as possible. I have suggested and realize why it was Vito training him in the Kyuubi chakra. Keeping him a secret still holds, even if Akatsuki has guessed at the secret. We don't want Naruto targeted by even more foes than just those bastards. But that means he'll need to be an S-rank ninja very shortly. To be fair, Jiraiya added, you are a better teacher than I am, as you love it more. But I have the time and wanderlust to help the kid. You won't be able to untangle yourself from the Hokage position quickly even once you land on a successor. Minato relied on you as his senior counselor up until his untimely death. However, Naruto and I could leave today, if you permitted it. I would like to do this, sensei, Naruto added, calmer now too. Tell me your reasons, Naruto. Sarutobi hated the idea for unknown gut instinct reasons. He needed someone to push him off his no. He was willing to be drugged into a different camp, but he needed a powerful reason. I would like to escape this blasted fame for a while. That's not a good reason, the Hokage began to say. Which is the first reason I started joking that Jiraiya should take me away to train. I knew he'd done it before, you see. But, in the last few days, I've come to realize that I need to leave in order to train. I can't practice the wind manipulations I've theorized not without causing massive damage to a training ground or a section of the forest outside the walls. I also need to see the world, I think. I need to know what's possible. You and I stumbled onto my very strong wind affinity and you helped me to hone it. But now I need more ideas. Something Jiraiya just said made me think. How would I turn this wind affinity into more than a massive exploding note? Could I use it for spying, or thieving documents, or kidnapping targets? Could I get that kind of control over it? Or could I use it, the way my father did with seals and reverse summoning, to make me faster than any ninja before? Or, I don't know what else is possible. You've both seen the world, sometimes through war, sometimes for missions, sometimes for pleasure. I'd like that chance, too. Sarutobi sighed. The boy was being reasonable. And he did have some fair to middling reasons, better than Jiraiya's at any rate. I do not like this idea. I know both of you do, but something about this strikes fear into my heart. But, I will compromise. Thank you, sensei, Naruto said. Don't thank me yet. Here is the proposal. Jiraiya will take you on a mission I will assign him. It will be to a foreign nation and will last less than a month. At the time of your return, you will show me a technique of Jiraiya's that he has taught you and an original technique of your own design. If you do this, along with completing the mission satisfactorily, then I will permit you both to leave on a training trip for, say, 1 year. If you fail, and I decide not to kill my white-haired student for being a moron, then Jiraiya will accept appointment to be Goddamn Hokage, and I will take over as your full-time sensei, Naruto. What? Jiraiya gasped. Okay, Naruto said. At this, Sarutobi began to laugh. This trip was going to make Jiraiya so miserable and so fearful that he wouldn't enjoy himself at all. He had to actually teach. Minato had actually grown tremendously on his training trip, but it was almost all self-discovered. Minato had admitted to Sarutobi one night over drinks in his new office and Sarutobi's old office in the Hokage Tower that the only things Jiraiya taught him on that trip were to how cure venereal diseases and how to summon toads. He further admitted, once he was drunk enough, that he listened to and tried Jiraiya's methods of seducing women and got a broken arm for his trouble the first time he tried Jiraiya's teaching. He owned up to developing his own techniques that worked much better for him, even on someone as fiercely independent as Uzumaki Kushina. Naruto, like his self-motivated father, was capable of performing beautifully, of dragging himself into greatness, as Sarutobi knew from first-hand experience. It would be easier and faster with a motivated, dedicated teacher, however. This trip would force Jiraiya to actually do something rather than sniff around the local young women and get drunk until all hours of the night. Do you accept, my aged student? Jiraiya's face was a mass of wrinkles and frowns. Yes. I will expect a weekly report delivered by Toad Messenger. That should help to remind you of your obligations. As Jiraiya leapt out of the room before he could get any more conditions attached to this farce, Sarutobi smiled at Naruto. Come to the tower tomorrow. I will select an appropriate C or B ranked mission. Yes, sensei. Thank you. Prove yourself, Naruto. Make me proud. Naruto smiled and nodded. I know you don't want me to go, but my gut tells me I need to do this. Mine say the exact opposite. May the better intestines win. Naruto yawned. It sucked being stuck in a hotel while the pervy sage was out scouting out new operatives. They were a day from Fire Country's capital and to meeting the diplomat they were supposed to escort to Wave Country. When Sensei had explained all the details of this trial training mission, it seemed like it would be interesting. Like a secret mission with a smart guy who would just ooze knowledge. But no, it was pretty much like Sensei had said. Jiraiya was off, Naruto was alone, stranded in a town he'd never visited before. He spent a bit of time on the road experimenting with a few wind techniques, but it had been 2 days since they'd left and Jiraiya hadn't taught him anything yet. Maybe Naruto would just have to fail to learn a new technique just to spite the white-haired bastard, force him to settle down in the hidden village and wear that ugly hat. A knock on the door pulled Naruto from his anger. He spiked a bit of air chakra, a gust of air outside the door, brushed up against whatever was out there. 2 people, neither with the massive hair Jiraiya had. Naruto didn't have a sense of who they were, but he had one bad guess. Naruto created a cage bunchen and went out the window. He walked right up to the top of the roof. It'd be easier to escape jumping from rooftop to rooftop. Hopefully his shadow clone would give him time to escape. God damn it, Toby. The voice. The blue-skinned ninja. Shit. How did you know he'd go out the window? Naruto's head whipped around. There, in the shadows. Yes, it was that guy with the sword. His shadow clone trick hadn't worked, somehow they'd expected it. He jumped off the roof to escape. Toby thinks Blonde Ninja is very crafty. Blondie did just what Toby would have done. Run. Naruto jumped from roof to roof. He didn't have any time for mocking comments. The blue one was way above his level and he had no idea at all what the orange masked one could do. When he jumped from another roof, he realized his pursuers were right behind him. He tried a bit of an experiment. He threw his arms slightly behind him and poured wind chakra through the tenketsu in his hands. Instead of falling and landing on the next building, the added jet of power pushed Naruto over 3 buildings. The only problem with this of necessity experiment was that he hadn't landed on top of the building, but rather had clung to the wall about halfway up it. Naruto ran up the building and then tried the whole thing again. The second blast pushed him further. He looked like he was going to make it all the way across the wide river that bisected the town. Close. He landed on the water and his feet clung to it while he tried to think. Where the hell was Jiraiya? How was Naruto supposed to find the worthless old bastard in a village of 20,000? Jiraiya bragged they had over 50 bars and clubs here. The old man could be in any of them or none of them. Naruto roused from his thinking when he felt the water behind him begin to roil. Something very like a shark seemed to be forming close to him. Naruto leapt onto the bank. All this wind chakra had bought Naruto only a few seconds. He ran. Without a thought. He was not prepared for this, not at all. But if it was his time he would not be captured. He would kill himself to deny his enemy what it desired. They seemed to know about and desire the Kyuubi. They couldn't have it. He'd protect the hidden leaf even if it took his death to do so. These people did not know what they were messing with when they came after Namikaze Naruto. The chase became more like a herding. Anytime Naruto got too close to the river to vanish back into the larger half of the town, sharks appeared. The orange-masked ninja somehow got ahead of Naruto at one point and forced him down a particular road. He decided on a plan. He realized they were hurting him. He couldn't exactly stop that if he were but a single ninja. But, if he precisely created a massive quantity of shadow clones and made sure they had truly equal chakra, then Naruto might be able to escape in the chaos. Mass shadow clone technique. Suddenly the little alley was filled with 1,000 blonde-haired ninja. The ninjas began climbing every wall possible to get out of the alley. They began dispersing almost as soon as they were created. God damn it. How come we never knew he could do this? Toby thinks it's pretty. So many ninja to dance for Toby. Shut it. Keep wounding them until we can find the real one. In the confusion, they did not notice one of the blonde ninjas dropping down into the storm sewer system. Well, he did not like the smells down there at all, he liked the idea of dying even less. Naruto finally heard Jiraiya arrive and take to battling the Akatsuki. He evidently drove them off because he was soon calling out Gaki. Over and over again. After 10 minutes of listening to it and deciding neither the blue-skinned nor the orange-masked ninja would debase themselves that way, Naruto crawled to the surface. "Here, worthless teacher. Naruto, are you okay?" The blonde ninja held up his hand and said, "Stop right there. Summon a toad or somehow prove that you're Jiraiya." That confused the toad Sannin for a moment, then he smiled. He performed the summoning and a small toad appeared and asked for some candy. Jiraiya threw him some and dismissed him. "What took you so long?" "Well, I was busy." It even seemed to sound lame to Jiraiya's pink-tinged ears. "The first clue I had was when I felt enough chakra sent up to make a couple hundred shadow clones, 1,000 or thereabouts. 300 got killed before those two were forced to stop hunting them." Jiraiya nodded once, as if that were that. "Right. You're safe. Let's get our stuff from the hotel and get on the road." Naruto was getting angrier the longer his bastard teacher spoke. He hadn't apologized. He was late. Naruto might like the guy and might have had high, or unrealistically high, expectations for the man who taught his father, but Naruto couldn't trust him. He couldn't depend upon him. Not one word to sensei about this. "You do that for me and I'll teach you my swamp of the underworld technique. If I told sensei, he'd kill you. He was against this from the beginning. And now I have to think he was right." Jiraiya's face fell. "So stop trying to bribe me. I'll give the old man a full, unvarnished report. And if you don't teach me something, Sarutobi will either kill you or make you Hokage." "I'm not sure which is worse," Jiraiya said under his breath. Naruto didn't say another word until they arrived at Daimyo's court. Even then he was barely civil. "I see, young Namikaze, that is a very interesting tale. The Fire Lord's ambassador was a kiss-ass. And he loved to talk, wouldn't shut up. Indeed, the only way to have him stop talking was to tell a story. So long as someone was talking, he was happy." As soon as he realized he was being escorted by a Sannin and the son of a Hokage, he couldn't have become friendlier and more amenable. Still, for Naruto's tastes, talking to the civilian kiss-ass was better than talking with Jiraiya. They were 1 week into their trip and it felt like Naruto had been gone for a month already. He hadn't realized he could hold a grudge, but it seemed he could. He had evidently established certain expectations regarding teachers, and Jiraiya had broken them all. The Hokage was always on time, always had 1 or 2 things he would instruct Naruto to work on, would trust his student to practice on his own time. That's what Naruto thought teaching was. It was only pure luck that Naruto was still alive right now. Jiraiya hadn't said word 1 about training yet, either. He slowed his breathing and calmed himself. He was a professional on a mission, bullshit could wait until the client was safe. Naruto's eyes wandered around everything he saw. Wave Country was pretty desolate. This was prime territory for bandits and other undesirables to attempt an attack on wealthy travelers. The Wave Daimyo's court was another few hours away when Jiraiya called a lunch break in yet another small, rundown village. Naruto followed the diplomat off to his choice restaurant. Jiraiya said he'd return shortly after taking care of some errands. The diplomat looked at each food option in the small village and promptly rejected it. Naruto got a bit peeved. He wasn't in a big town. He could eat what they served or he could stay hungry until they arrived at court. After 20 minutes of turning his nose up at what was available, the diplomat said he wasn't hungry. Naruto kept an eye on the man while he placed an order for sushi. While in Wave Country, he could enjoy really fresh fish, right? Jiraiya returned before Naruto claimed his order. He took 1 look at things, then went to a stand selling miso glazed chicken. Naruto watched a man sit at the counter and eat his meal while the diplomat was simmering in anger over his self-induced hunger. Then Naruto watched a man at the stand strike up a conversation and Jiraiya began to smile and his voice got louder, his boasting voice. What had got worthless teacher so interested? Since Naruto had turned the cold shoulder to him, the man hadn't said more than a few words, precisely the number of needed words to anyone. Moody bastard. He almost gets someone killed and then he pouts about it. Naruto thanked the vendor and paid him for the sushi. Then he began to enjoy it, all the while keeping part of his attention on the silly-looking diplomat and the rest on the Jiraiya and his hand-waving conversation. Jiraiya finished his chicken and continued to speak with the other man. Was this a guy a fan of perverted books? Eventually, Jiraiya got up and left. Ready? 10 minutes ago, the diplomat huffed. Naruto just nodded. With luck, we'll be there by nightfall. Naruto did not see Jiraiya's acquaintance get up from the chicken stand, or his hinge drop, or his red and black eyes spin to a stop, leaving only black pupils. Naruto did not know why this Uchiha was particularly interested in one of the teammates of the dead Snake Sannin. Or how he had casted Genjutsu to force Jiraiya into craving miso glazed chicken. Naruto couldn't predict what was going to happen in the not-too-distant future as a consequence. Okay, bastard teacher. The mission to wave is done. Now we have at least a week before we need to escort that annoying guy back. So teach me something. Jiraiya looked at his student and frowned. I could teach you the hand signs for a dozen jutsu and you could make them look good, but it would not give you the experience, the wisdom of how to use them, when to deploy them. No, our training together begins with a little exercise, a training exercise. I'm listening. Jiraiya had expected Naruto to be indignant about not being taught a technique. Maybe this boy was more mature than he seemed. Alright. This country was basically conquered and broken by a businessman named Gato. Rich guy owns ships and docks and warehouses and such enough of them to basically buy the daimyo, that useless turd. Then this Gato died in a boating accident. When his body washed up on shore, his thugs discovered that Gato's legendary billions were a myth. He'd been spending every dime he made. That's usually when things go to shit in fighting, virtual civil war, blood in the gutters. Not this time, 3 of them decide to carve up what Gato did this time to make money for themselves. If anything, things have gotten worse for the inhabitants of this country since Gato's death. That's a terrible story, worthless teacher. But what do you expect me to do? Jiraiya kept his tongue in check over the honorifics Naruto now bestowed on him. Your first training exercise is an assignment in intrigue. Destroy this Gato corporation so it can't rise from the grave again. You'll have to figure out how to do this. Get the information, figure out how to cripple it. And you be any more specific? Naruto asked, getting interested despite his irritation with Jiraiya. No. Sometimes this is all you get from a client. What the end result looks like. A lot of them don't care about methods. You may choose to kill everyone who works for Gato Corporation, a rather messy solution, or to cause a public scandal over this for the daimyo, forcing him to act or lose his position in a power struggle, or maybe you'll destroy the Gato infrastructure, like the docks or the boats, that allow them to keep this place under their thumb. I can think of a dozen ways to do this. Jiraiya just smiled. But this is your task. Fix it. Simple. Naruto was nodding by the time Jiraiya was finished. It was a lesson in applied ninja skills. One could train to his heart's contentment, but if he couldn't think he'd die in the field. This assignment was to hone Naruto's thinking capabilities and to do a good deed. And it seemed to be bringing the boy out of his funk. Naruto began to walk away. Then his head whipped around. Don't forget what sensei said. If I don't learn one of your techniques, you'll be stuck in Hidden Leaf for life. And, as Hokage, you'll have to maintain a good image at all time. No more dirty books, no more visiting bars every place you go, no more dating 16-year-old girls. You'll probably never leave the town again until you retire. Unless you cause a war or something, you worthless bastard. Jiraiya frowned. Maybe Naruto wasn't out of his funk. What if Naruto become Hokage after Hiruzen sarutobi death? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.